Jesus.
We're back.
Let's go.
We back, Pastor Ted. We are back.
Let's go.
Okay. Hopefully the audio is better.
Yeah.
Y'all, if you got intercessors in the chat,
Yeah.
pray. Okay.
Amen.
Because the enemy has been trying to come against this, but we're just going to continue to go.
Yeah.
I know that it's going to work out, right?
Mhm.
So I want you to jump back in.
Yeah.
Pastor Ted is sharing his testimony. This is Pastor Ted of the Family Church here in New Jersey.
Yes.
And we're at a good point right now because
Amen.
we're leading up.
We're leading up. We're getting there.
We're leading up
Yeah.
to how we got to this, to where
Yeah.
Kappa Alpha Psi comes
Yeah.
into the midst of this, right? And so, yes, I want you to start where you hear the audible voice of God
Yeah.
and how you come to Christ.
So the backdrop that got us here was I'm 17 years old. I had just fractured my vertebra playing football. I thought I was gonna play football, but now I fractured my vertebra. I shared the fact that I was suffering from colorism, where I was dark skinned. People made fun of me, and then all of a sudden I got cute again with Wesley Snipes. And then I talked about that I had a porn addiction by being exposed to porn in one of my older brother's rooms. And all of this now is where I'm at a place with an identity crisis. And here we are. It's whatever year it was when I was 17. And as I said, I'm the baby of 5. So my family's all around and we're watching television. It's around Christmas time. And we're watching PBS and Daryl Coley comes on. Well, I'm sorry. Hezekiah Walker comes on. Hezekiah Walker and the Love Fellowship Crusade Choir. And he's got the Gumby going on, which kind of pulled me in because I had never seen nothing like that before. Because we actually were raised Methodist, Wacote United Methodist Church, which is actually at that time was just a tick away from Catholicism. Of course, we weren't Catholic, but a lot of the Catholic traditions we still did. And to be quite honest with you, when I go back, I don't even think we were saved. Just keeping it a buck, because at that time, our church believed that when you get christened, that the water takes away original sin. So there were no altar calls. Nobody accepted Christ as Lord and Savior at the church. So again, that's kind of the backdrop. We're church goers, but not really Christ followers. And I'm watching this TV show, and Hezekiah Walker is ministering. And then right after Hezekiah, then there's another gentleman called Daryl Coley. He's an amazing voice. He's gone on to be with the Lord. But he starts to minister, and it just pulled me in. And he started to sing a song called Sovereign. And as he's singing, he's really like ministering to my life. You know what I mean? Just the whole quandary that I was just in about who am I, my identity, am I loved, am I smart? Because I shared about the ADHD. And he says, who am I to question God's sovereignty? Who am I to question what God allows to be? And he says, I realize that my God is sovereign. And he goes, oh, he hits the high note. And for the very first time, it only happened twice in my life. This is the first one. You'll hear about the second one in a minute. I heard an audible word from God where I literally heard God's voice. And it was not a voice that went in my ears. If y'all can understand this, it was coming out of my ears, like it was coming out of my soul. And it was very simply, the Lord just said to me, I've called you to pastor. I've called you to pastor. He said it 3 times. I've called you to pastor. By the second time that he said it, like I'm thinking I'm crazy. I'm crying. I'm looking around and I'm saying out loud, can you hear this? Does anybody hear this? And I just started to weep. And I wasn't even like an emotional kid back in the day. And so after that happened, my parents, everybody's coming over to me and I'm crying. And I said, God just told me he's called me to pastor. And, as I share with you, I wasn't that good at school at the time and prior to that time. And I was often with the ADHD, a behavioral problem. So everybody's like, what, a pastor? And then my mother starts to share with me, no, like that makes sense. And I'm looking at her like, like what? And she says, since you were a child, people have always, I'd never shared it with you. She said, people have always, I didn't believe it. She said, people have always prophesied and shared that they believe that you had a call on your life and that you would pastor. She said that one of your cousins, older cousins, had a dream, a prophetic dream where somebody had taken your Mickey Mouse watch, and you were crying, and in the dream it was just said, because somebody returned your time to you, and it was just said that just give Teddy time. It's one of the reasons why I wear Mickey Mouse on my cover on my watch, to remind me of that dream, that no matter what happens in your life, time is actually the mercy of God. And as you use that time, God can redeem time. And so my mother, who was a school teacher, both my parents were school teachers at the time. My mother says to me, all right, well, let's interview them. And I said, interview you? Who? She said, let's interview pastors. She said, we're going to go to interviews. We're going to interview some pastors in the town. We're going to interview our pastor. If God's called you to pastor, you need to understand what it is. I'm 17. I'm getting ready to go to college. So I think in her mind, she's like, look, maybe you need to go to seminary. And so we did that. So we sit down with 3 pastors, and I was mortified. By the time I finished talking to the 3rd pastor, I was mad. I felt like this was a practical joke. I was mad at my mom for suggesting that we do this. I was mad at the pastors that I met with. And more so, I was mad at God. Why, you ask? It's because I found out this ain't no job. This a calling. These men have to go to school. They got to go get an undergraduate, have to get a PhD. This guy's a doctor. He's got a doctorate. They live in a parsonage. It's broke down. He said he's got rats in his. I was like, wait a second. I want to be sexy. That's what I wanted to be when I grew up. I wanted to be sexy, and I wanted to have money, and I wanted to be powerful. And that's not what this is. And I actually got mad at God. And I said, this is a practice. You don't tell nobody that at 17 that this is what you've been called to do. And I made a vow. I said to God, I said, you did not call me the pastor, and you watch and see what I do in my life. And it was funny, even during that time, like I couldn't, cuss. I couldn't without being reminded that, whoa, like I got to call a pastor. When I tried to play dice with my friends, I was convicted. And so I just rebelled, and I said, nah, you didn't call me to do that. And so kind of what goes along with that story is, like I told you about my issues with ADHD and school, and I played football, and I really thought that I was going to go maybe to the league, but I definitely thought I was going to college playing football, because I was doing really well. And then after the accident that happened, now here I am. I'm about to graduate. I got a C average, so I'm a C average student. So what I did was I went ahead and I took the ASVAB test for the military. I scored. Again, I realized I'm not dumb, so I scored really high on the ASVAB. I was going to go into special intelligence. And so I figured that's what I was going to do. And then we got a phone call from the school. It's my senior year, telling me to report to the awards banquet at our high school, because you're going to get an award. And I'm looking at my mom. I got a C average. I don't know what they're going to get, And I remember, I'm in ROTC. Maybe I'm going to get a leadership award, something, I'm in the drill team. Maybe they're going to give me something. So we go. And it was crazy. There was a guy named Aaron Grossbach. Remember I told you that my sisters were 6 years older than me. When we were in junior high and high school, Aaron actually went to college with my sisters. So he's my age, but at this point in time, he's probably, he almost has enough credits to graduate from college, even though he's in high school. So they called Aaron Grossbach up, and he got this big award. And he's going, I don't know where he went to, MIT. I don't know where he went to school. And then they called up Theodore Trader Winsley. And so I stand up and I walk up there, and I'll never forget it. He's in my book, Mr. Roberts, who was the athletic director, who often would see me walking around the hallways in mischief, doing crazy stuff, because my sisters were track stars. They actually still have records. Shout out to Kathy Kier. They also have records, high school records. And so Mr. Roberts would kind of look out for me because I was the twins' little brother. And he'd see me in the hallway doing crazy stuff. And I didn't realize he was actually kind of like a what do you call it, a guardian angel. But he calls me up, and he's the one that announced my full academic scholarship to Delaware State College. It was the highest financial scholarship that the school offered. Here's a kid who has a C average, and this is really like a prophetic moment, because while I'm there, Aaron Grossbach is standing next to me, who's the brainiac of the world, going to MIT. And then he says, and he says that Aaron Grossbach is going to do amazing things. He's a great mind. And then he says, and Teddy Winsley. And then everybody, and then I smiled, and everybody laughed. And he said, just let him speak. He said, just let Teddy talk, and he's going to be great. And so again, all of these things are happening. And so now I'm going to college. Now what I didn't share with you was, as a result of all of my meetings with the pastors, they actually were the Waco United, or the Methodist denomination, actually gave me an application to go to seminary. So they were talking about possibly, I think it was Morehouse or some other schools, Stony Brook, or I forget what other school, Slippery Rock, I don't know. But I sabotaged the application. So I don't know, ABC 1, 2, 3, I don't know, but I sabotaged the application because this was the point where I decided I'm not doing this. I'm not going to school to be no minister. And so that never came through, but yet God still gave me a full academic ride to Delaware State College, and I had a C average. And so that spoke to me, that told me that God wants me to go to school. So I actually got out of having to go to the military. I didn't go so far where I actually went and enlisted. So that canceled that. And then I was able to go to Delaware State College, where I had an academic ride my freshman year. And again, like I said, still kind of the residue of all of this with what God was saying he wanted me to do. There was an opportunity, because they didn't have an on-campus Bible study. And somebody came to one of the advisors, said, well, why don't you guys start? Because we said we were Christian, we like Jesus. Why don't you start a Bible study and bring back it's called Wesley On-Campus Ministry. And so a friend of mine named Tony, who you met, we'll talk about him later. So we're like, hey, Tone, I had just met him. He's from New Jersey. And like, hey, man, and he loved Jesus too. And I said, well, let's start a Bible study, Right. So we actually started Wesley On-Campus Ministry. I was the president. He was the vice president. I don't think I was saved at the time, just to be quite honest with you. And we started it, and it was whack, and nobody came, and we were like, ain't no girls coming, and we looked silly. And I think we might have did, and now Tone gets mad when I say this, but I think we might have done a fundraiser, and I kept the money. How about that, Tone? So I kept the money, and then we just quit. We just stopped. And so then Tony leaves, and he goes and pledges Kappa Alpha Psi, and he comes back. So we're gonna put a pin in that. So I wound up graduating from college. I actually wound up giving my life to Christ. We'll talk about that later on in a minute. And I graduated from college, and I got married, and I accepted the call on my life. And I went on and became a national sales manager for a clothing line y'all might remember called FUBU, Damon John. I amassed or I had a 6-figure salary job. I was balling, company car. I was sexy. Remember what I said when I wanted to be?
Yep, that's what you said.
So it's funny because I was a minister. So I was a minister at our local church. But then also, like I said, I was blowing up. I was balling. We was making money. It was about to be like that. And it's funny, my pastor actually asked me to come full time and to be over marketing and media. We belong to like about a 6,000 member church, not far from here. And it's funny, he calls me, and like I said, I'm dealing with celebrities and traveling all around the country. And so he asked me to come full time. And I was like, okay, well, I know church is doing well. I make a about $115,000, $120,000 back in 1993, 94.
Right.
And so he says, okay, well, we'll offer you 40. And so
40,000.
yeah, 40,000. That's what I said.
For one
And I,
fifteen.
and I was like, okay, well, I want you to see my W-2. I want you to see I'm not playing,
Right.
And so we're talking on the phone, and he says to me, well, this isn't a negotiation. This is a ministry opportunity. And so I said, I thought we were negotiating. I said, okay, well, no, I'm not going to take it. Now, here's the crazy part. By this time, I'm redeemed, and I love the Lord, and I'm a minister, and I really want to come full time. But I also wanted to make sure my baby had this house, because what I learned prior to that, churches, they don't make no money, and
Right.
and I don't want to be broke, and I can't depend on people, and so maybe the Lord wants to bless us with this nice job so we can buy the house and do all this and get a savings, and then I'll go full time. And so I told him no, thinking we were negotiating, and the moment while we were on the phone, I felt like that I missed it. I felt like I missed God. And there's a old adage or story about the little boy who got caught smoking his father's cigar. And then the father comes in and makes him smoke a box. And that's what happened to me. So I told Pastor Lamont no, that I didn't want to take the job, because you weren't trying to offer me enough. And he just says, okay. And then I says, okay, I'll take it. And he said, mm-mm. He said, because if this is about money for you, it's not time. And so back to the story about smoking a box, smoking a cigar, having to smoke a box, it felt like that's what God did to me, because he said, I'll talk to you in 6 months. For the next 6 months, I was offered more money. I had more celebrity opportunities. Everything that I thought I wanted. I was hanging out with, I could name drop if you want me to. I'm not going to. And except this time, like that, the box of cigars, it made me sick. And so here 6 months later, I'm at Daytona, Florida, Daytona Beach, at a sales conference, and I'm calling my pastor. Hey, what y'all doing? How's everything? How's everything at the church? And I said, because I'm sick. I'm like this. I don't want to do this. Like I want to live for God. And he called and he said to me, he said, are you ready now? And I asked him, I said, so is do you still have the job? And he says, it wasn't a job, it's your position. I can't fill your position without you. Of course, it's still here. And he says, are you ready? And I said, yeah. I said, I'm ready. I'm ready to get out of here. I don't want to do this. I want to live for God. I'll figure out because now the salary didn't change. It was still going to be 40. And I was still going to have to figure out how to go from 115 or 120 to 40. And I'll never forget, he said, well, go tell your sales manager that you're done. And I went up to the office, and I told my sales manager, the VP of sales, hey, man, like I'm about to do what makes my heart soar. Yeah, I got to go. And I said, I just asked you a question. Are you doing what makes your heart soar? So tear went down his eye. And he was like, hey, man, I don't want to talk about it. Because by this time, I'm outwardly, openly a man of God on my job. Right. They literally, I was killing the sales game. They knew that I was a minister. They knew that I would, on certain days, I got to be the first one that comes, because I'm going to be the first one to leave, because I got midweek service.
Right.
And I remember my sales manager, who was a Jew, who was Jewish, I would tell him, like, hey, man, like I have to go, because what you love about me is called the anointing. And so therefore, and he would just say, hey, leave Ted alone. He's anointed. And whatever we need to do to allow him to keep being anointed, we're going to let that happen, because he's making us money. So they knew about my faith at this point in time. And so I said, I'm about to do what makes my heart soar. Are you doing what makes your heart soar? And he was like, hey, man, just get out of here.
Leave me out of it.
And they said that they contacted Damon, and they told Damon that I was out, because I didn't even tell him. And they were like, yo, man, like whatever you got to do, offer him more money. And he was just like, nah, like he's gone. And so the crazy part, we're wrapping up to answer your question to start.
This is good.
So then I actually go back to my job. This was actually I go back to the church called Live in Faith, and I work full time in marketing and over the television broadcast. So August is when I left. August is when I started the job. And then the next month, there's probably a date we might remember. It's called 9/11 happened.
Right.
And so literally, I got phone calls on 9/11 from sales managers who were in the not in the hallways, in the alleyways underneath cars, talking about, yo, man, a plane just hit. Crazy part was I would often go to the towers because we had sales calls that took place in there. So I wind up the next month is 9/11, and we get a phone call. My pastor gets a phone call from the Philadelphia Eagles. One of the players saw him on television. That was my job. I was over the broadcast, and his name was Troy Vincent. Shout out to Troy. And asked my pastor to actually do Bible studies. And so I was his assistant. So Pastor Lamont said, okay, I want you to carry the Bibles. I want you to set up the microphone. And he would go in and he would minister to the players. And after about a year and a half, he looks at me and said, I don't think I'm supposed to be doing this. You are.
Ooh.
So 25 years later, I'm the chaplain for the Philadelphia Eagles. I made it to 2 Super Bowls. I got 2 Super Bowl rings. I never played a down of football. Yet God full circle, from me believing that my identity was wrapped in sports. No, sports was actually going to be a platform for ministry. And so by answering the call, God actually just full circle used the very thing that I thought I lost as a platform for his glory.
This is amazing. And your wife, she ministers too.
Yeah, so Pastor Dawn and I, shout out to Pastor Dawn. Say something loud, Pastor Dawn. So we actually, for the past this is going on our 25th season. We do Bible studies, we do counseling, marriage, you name it, pre-marriage counseling. I do Bible studies during the week with the players, and now I'm also the chaplain over the coaches as well. So the coaches, and then the night before the game, if it's here, we'll minister to the entire team that comes, or if it's away, I'll fly out there and we'll minister to them before the games.
And she ministers to the women.
And she ministers to the baby mamas, the wives, and the girlfriends. Yeah.
This is amazing. And all of this is in your book.
Here we go. Shameless plug, guys. All of this, and even the story that we're about to talk about, is in View from the End Zone, the 4 tests you must pass to win in life. You can get it on Amazon. And it actually really talks about the wilderness experience that Jesus faced and the wilderness experience that we all have to face, and the 4 tests: the test of identity, the test of presumption, the test of performance, and the test of taking shortcuts. Is what Jesus had to face and what we all have to face if we're going to win in life.
This is so good. I think it was important for people to know your backstory and what you've come out of. It doesn't matter, even in ministry, because I think you did a really good job of even sharing what that looks like to, number one, want to start ministry, but not really fully being in Christ.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that was a mess. And we didn't last.
Right. We throw a Bible study just for the women to be coming, right?
Right.
And taking
That's what we're doing for the chicks.
Right. And then it's like all that vanity, greed, the importance of even that sanctification piece that needs to happen before you enter into ministry. And it's actually really good, in my opinion, to now transition into how you became a member of Kappa Alpha Psi, how the Lord called you out of it. Because I will personally say that as a former member of Delta, a lot of those attributes and characteristics we were just talking about, whether it was greed, whether it was lust, whether it was vanity, whether it was selfish ambition,
addiction,
all the works that we were doing, a lot of that, in my opinion, amplified in these organizations. One of the main reasons we were drawn to these organizations was for that shiny life that we ultimately wanted, that props us up on a pedestal, right? And so those things are in our heart. Those are going to be the organizations where we gravitate to. And so I want you to take me back in your story, now that the backstory is said, and tell me how you were even introduced to Kappa Alpha Psi before you went to Delaware State.
Sure. So my introduction to Kappa Alpha Psi was in my home. As I shared, I'm the baby of 5. My oldest brother actually pledged spring of 76 Beta Sigma chapter at University of Delaware. And so like I said, we're 15 years apart. So all my life, for real, all I remember are boys coming to the house, getting beat in the backyard, washing cars, walking around with these wooden scrolls on, looking sad and funky, and hairs uncombed, and looking afraid. I also say that, looking scared. Being with my brother as maybe 13 years old, where I'm in his Mach. I don't know if you remember what a Mach 1 or a Mustang, where he's driving full board towards the line as they're standing out on the yard, and he slams on the brakes. I'm sorry, Frank. And he slams on the brakes and just barely hits them. And just seeing all this crazy stuff and just saying in my head, I will never pledge Kappa Alpha Psi. This is crazy. These boys are stupid. I even swung on him. Like I think one time he let me hit him with a paddle. Just because I really, and again, I was ornery. I really felt like this was stupid. Like this is dumb. And as much as I loved my brother, I was like, and you're going to let him do this? You're going to let him? I was still familiar with him. You're going to let him do this to you? And so again, like, and I talked junk to them because I was like, who in their right mind would even do this? And then I saw, my brother got branded. I thought that was great. Why would somebody, so it's funny, like I said, that this was my exposure, and I'm looking at all these things and I'm like, I will never do this. This is the stupidest thing. And so, and so, like I said, I go to Delaware State. Back to the story. Freshman year, we start the on campus ministry. It's whack. We're whack. People making fun of us. And then my best friend at the time that I met at college, Tony Anthony Gilmer, actually leaves college, and I didn't know really where he went. He left college and actually went to West Virginia State, where they had a line, and he pledged Kappa his sophomore year, because the Kappas were actually off the yard because I think somebody got lung punctured or something crazy happened. And so the chapter had been suspended maybe for 8 or 10 or 11 years. So there were no Kappas. People were pledging and pre-pledging, but there were no Kappas. So again, wasn't even thinking about it. So I'm going about with my life. And then Tony comes back the next year. So now this is junior year. And now I'll also say this, like even during that time, the porn addiction is still rampant. Right. Now in college, I'm very promiscuous because I'm really just I love anybody that loves me. You know what I mean? That was kind of the mindset. And so these were things that were active in my life at that time. And so then Tony comes back. And he's a Kappa. Now Tony's, we call him Lil Tone. He got taller, but we just call him Lil Tone. And so all of a sudden, Lil Tone come back, and Lil Tone's got this shiny satin jacket on, and a swagger. He's got a little. Tony was small but mighty, and small and had a little something to him.
He gonna get you.
Now he actually had like a different swagger to him, right? So he comes back. He's a Kappa, and my brother who lived in Newark, Delaware. Had a home, which I consider my house. So like, I would have girls, whatever, at his house because it was my house. And so here we go. Now I'm at my brother's house, which is my house, and in my brother's kitchen, which is my kitchen. I'm saying this on purpose. Right. And now I'm with my best friend, who's my friend, and except they're frat. And so we're in the room, and this is where everything shifted, and I didn't realize, that this was about to happen because I still kind of had the same thought that I had about fraternity life, that it was stupid. And so I'm in the room with and now my brother's 15 years older than me, and that 15 years, he's almost like a second father. You know what I mean? So like, and because of the era that my father lived in, my father, good man, not. Towards the end of his life, he told me he loved me, but he wasn't very expressive. Dad was good dad. But anyway, my point was, me and my brother almost had like a father-son relationship. So here we are, big brother, it was like a father, best friend, and they say to me, okay, Teddy, we need you to leave. Leave where? Where am I supposed to go? What are you talking about? Leave where? I need you to leave the room. Leave the room for what? And I was serious. Leave the room for what? Well, we got some Kappa business. And? Well, you're not a Kappa. I think maybe Tone said it, and then I looked at Frankie, what? And so Frank was like, yeah, you got to go. And so I walked out of that room, and it did something to me. Like, I walked out of the room feeling like something's missing in my life. Because that's my brother who's like my dad. That's my best friend. And now they have something that we don't have. I'm a pledge. And so that was the day. That was the day of my heart.
Seed was planted.
That was it. I decided that hey, we're gonna pledge. And so Tone actually was the catalyst to bring back the chapter. So Tone, there was another Kappa from another school, and they actually worked it out to where the chapter came back.
Yeah.
And so we actually were pre-pledging. So because this was spring of '92 is when we crossed, but this was back the time. I think this was I think '92 was when they started the new intake process.
Explain that.
Yep. So the intake process is basically where it has nothing to do with the undergrad yard, because we can't trust undergrad. And now the graduate chapter is actually going to take you through the ritual, and you'll become a Kappa because the grad chapter takes you through. So after their process, and it's very quick, and after their process, you're in. So back in that day, what they would do was that you would pre-pledge. So we pre-pledged ourselves. So it was about 20 of us. It's more than 20 at the time. We pre-pledged ourselves because the mindset was that, okay, so after we go through the intake, we're gonna pledge.
Got it.
So therefore, we started beating on each other and taking wood to hey, so this is what it's gonna be, so that we can trust that you're gonna be down. And so therefore, we actually went through the graduate chapter intake process. And I guess we could talk about that. We'll come back to that, because like I said, God actually used you. Because, I denounced over 30 years ago, and there were things about the process that I absolutely forgot that you brought back to my remembrance. But here's the process. So we went through the one day. It was a one day. We did the application. We did the smoker, where people interviewed us. Somebody has to vouch for you, who's the Kappa, all that good stuff.
And what's a smoker?
Smoker is a meeting where you get questioned, and where they really recruit you. But it's really where they're kind of, for the most part, weeding out the group to decide who they want to be in.
Right.
Yeah. And so again, I'm a legacy, which means that my brother was already a member of the frat. So therefore, I'm considered a legacy. Which, in other words, I'm going to get online. You're going to get an opportunity to pledge because your family is already a part of the family. So that's already done. And so we go through the intake process, and we'll talk about that later, the ceremony, all of that. So the ceremony is done. We walk out of the place where the ceremony takes place, and then there were vans outside of the building that we were in. So the ceremony takes place, and we're Kappas, but we're not Noops. So therefore, after the one night ceremony takes place, there are vans, and we get thrown in the vans, and it's on. And so our pledging process begins. So we're online. We're not living. We're kind of living together. I remember we were the big brothers. We would stand over the big brothers and watch them sleep and protect their sleep. So we weren't allowed to go to sleep while they were. As long as the big brothers sleep, you ain't sleeping. So we would sit in the Kappa chair and have our back on the wall.
What's Kappa chair?
Kappa chair is where you put your back on the wall, and you're in a chair, and because you're a chair, sometimes people would sit on you, and you had to keep them up. or you had to sleep in the chair. And it's crazy. I actually learned how to sleep standing up, which is ridiculous. So we were online, I guess, for a couple of minutes. So that's what I'm saying. It's been so long. So we were online, I believe, for about 2.5 months. We were online for about 2.5 months, and it was crazy. So the way the process started was in the very beginning. We you had to kick knowledge, and if you don't know your history, then we'd have to run, or we'd have to do push-ups. Now, our chapter was Beta Sigma, or Bloody Beta Sigma, which was part of the Bloody Triangle, which included Lincoln, University of Maryland Eastern Shore, Delaware State, and so we were known for getting down.
Right.
So really, maybe it was one night that we did calisthenics. If you mess up, and probably the next couple of nights you getting smacked in the face, you getting punched in the face, you're getting paddled, and then I think maybe after the first week they introduced the cane. The cane is insane, and so it was like I said, I remember my line brother in front of me. I believe he got his tailbone broken. The line brother behind me, he got his ear drum popped because someone did the clap. And
what's the clap?
Basically where they just take the palms of their hands and just pop you in the ear. And then you remember the smile wipe where you get hit on the top of the head, it goes all the way down. It's crazy because for real, this wasn't Greek, this was slave, y'all. Like let's keep it a buck. The things that we were going through, the things that we were experiencing, was really, it was almost like we were trying to reenact the atrocities that happened to Black people,
right.
When we went through. And it's funny because I also believe, like personally for me, because I was looking to be, what's the word? I was looking for someone to declare me as a man. I was looking a rites of passage, and I think that's kind of the danger if you don't, if you never come to the place where you find your identity from God. You're willing to go through anything. From man to be called a man. So again, we got paddled with the wood, we got paddled with the cane. I remember there was a time when I was we were online. It was actually towards the end. It was our turn back, and turn back for us. You're supposed to the chapter. You take 121 strokes.
121 strokes.
Take 100.
Was it paddle and cane?
Yeah. It was paddle and cane. It was paddle and cane, and then one of the paddles was actually my brother. I guess he won it. It was actually a rowing oar. It was a rowing oar that was cut to be about this big, and they put holes in it. And they had the red and white tape, and we got paddled with a rowing oar. So that night for turn, it's called turn back. From a chapter wise, you take 121 strokes. Now you didn't hear the real part. They lost count 3 times.
Right.
So I don't know how many. I know I got hit in my behind over 300 times. But by that time, we've been online so long, and we're getting beat. To the point where if you want to know whether someone is pledging or not, that's what you do to their behind. You knock on it. And if it doesn't make a noise, they would say he ain't ready yet. Or they're not pledging, either one, too. So by the time that we're at turn back and I'm taking 300 strokes, this is how my behind was. And so this is why canes and paddles break, because your body is now at a point where, and now also what happens is, if the paddle doesn't break, bones will in you.
Oh,
that's what happens to people.
Lord.
So I remember that night. That was actually the night where, and it's funny, one of the guys that I idolized. So on top of, you asked me why I pledged Kappa, it was my brother Frank and Tony, my best friend. But I'll never forget my freshman year. Because again, I think in the other testimony, if y'all saw that part, I talked about like being dark skinned and how people made fun of me. And I really did not feel like I was attractive, even when, like I said, Wesley hooked a brother up, Wesley Snipes. And even when it was in fashion to be dark, like, ooh, now you look good. I still didn't believe that I looked good. And so I remember my freshman year, this dude, his name was Joe Smooth, Joe Duval. Love you, Joe. He actually, dark-skinned brother, he had on a black satin Kappa jacket. The ladies were swooning when he walked in the room. And I was like, I'm going to be Joe. And now here's the crazy part. And one of the reasons why I'll never forget Joe is because during the turn back, Joe was the one. And now this is an honor. So this is an honor that Joe Smooth is hazing me, because I want to be like Joe. I want to be black, sexy, and dark gable and all this other stuff. And so I'm getting beat in my hands. It's called the gimme. And we say, I love gimme. I love gimme. I want gimme, 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 gimme. They just begin to take a paddle. In this instance, it was a cane and just beat you in your hands. And so, and so I'll never forget. I did forget, but now I remember that night Joe was giving me the gimme, and obviously I don't remember. So I remember getting the gimme, but I don't remember what happened. But this must have what happened, that one of my hands must have fell, and when I went to go put it back up, he caught me. So if y'all can tell, it's not supposed to be able to do this. So the bone broke, but really what happened was that the tendon is severed, and the nerve also got severed. So it's funny. So we go through that. I get hit. We go through the turn back. We do the swim. Come on, somebody. We go through all of that, and then we cross. And the next morning,
just the swim.
So the swim. You made the you reminded me where Kappa's the god of Adelphi, right?
Yep. Apollo.
Apollo, where he turns into a dolphin and swims to the shores of Phi Nu Pi. So part of the ritual is that you have to swim. So some chapters actually go to a body of water. Some guys Silver Lake. Some guys go to they actually just hose you down with with a hose, and you got to swim. Some people have drowned going through that part of it. Different chapters do different things, but that's one of the challenges. As a Kappa, can you swim? It's crazy. So we go through all of that, and I'll never forget. Oh, let me finish. Yeah. So we go through that, and so before that night. Joe Smooth, because now we done cross. And Joe comes to me and he says, "All right, man. So you're a noob. Negroes under pressure excel. Here's the grip." And he took my hand and he squeezed it 3 times, and I was like, "That's the grip." And they were like, "Yeah, man." I was like, "Come on, man." You know what I'm saying? Like my Joan is broke. I almost lost my scholarship. That's the grip. And I'll never forget these words. And this was actually the beginning of me getting out with what he said, because it did something to my heart. And he said to me, "Now you have to pretend like it's more than what it really is, like I was doing." And he gave me the grip. and so again, I don't know if you ever seen, you remember, the phrase where everybody's covered, don't let them see it. Man, right. It ain't nothing to not see.
Ain't nothing going on.
Yeah. So again, the reality is the secret isn't really a secret. It's a tool to make you believe that you're missing something, because it really isn't anything. And when you find out that what it really is, now you have to pretend that it's something when you know it ain't
nothing. And you was talking about how they took one of your line brothers and was about to put his head through a wall.
So I'm sorry. So let's get back online. So just crazy things happen when we were online. I'll never forget. Again, I've heard people talk about, I think some of the Deltas have done this, but where you have to pass the apple, the Kappa apple, and that is where they take the egg on number 1, and we crack the egg on number 1, and then you got to put it in their mouth. And so I didn't know. I've heard people say, don't break the yolk. Well, no, that wasn't what we had to do. We had to gargle it. So in other words, you put the egg in the mouth. The number 1 gargles it and then goes to the mouth of number 2 and drops it in his mouth. And then he gargles it to number 3. drops in the name out. I don't know what we could have had, all types of stuff we should have had. Thank you, Lord, that I didn't get it. Even though I did get it, because it went from the beginning all the way to the back. I was in the middle. It was number 13 out of 20. And then they said, where's the legacy? So I raised my hand. And so number 20 had to give it to 19, had to give it to 18, had to give it to 17, had to give it to 16, had to give it to 15, had to give it to 14. And then they gave it back to me.
To you.
And then they said, swallow it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Don't throw up. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And again, and guess what? I swallowed it. And now, mind you, also, this is also, too, just the whole, they called me a super scroller because in my mind, I felt like I was better than everybody else. And I really wanted some guys to drop because I didn't want them, because I don't do anything halfway. I do it all the way.
Right.
So if we're going to be a Kappa, we're going to be Kappa. If we're going to be noops, we're going to be noops. If we're going to be pretty, we're going to be pretty. And some of y'all was corny, and some of y'all, come on, man, like you ain't know how to dress before, and then nobody wants you before. Like I wanted some guys to drop, to be honest with you. That's
the brotherhood.
Yeah, that's the brotherhood. Yeah.
Right.
And that's what it taught me.
Right.
And so it's crazy. Like, even though as nasty as that was, I felt, and then of course during that process, I've heard you share it, and it happened with us. Some guys would throw up before, like that. It took a long time for us to get to that.
Right.
And then you would at the end say, if you got to throw up, spit up in your brother's bag, and you would throw up in his hoodie, and then they would take his hoodie and put it on his head, and then we start all over. And again, like, the crazy part is, again, even as we're saying this, like, we have to understand that there's a spirit behind this.
Yes.
Like, what's this? This isn't brotherhood. This isn't love. This ain't fraternity. This ain't fidelity.
No.
Not only is it demonic, it is self-hatred, and that's why I say, like, it's amazing that, slavery really did a number on us. And again, this is a whole HBCU black thing where, this is how you know that the devil really used the trauma that happened to our people, to get us to actually play out the trauma, because, again, none of this is Greek. This is slave. This is I hate myself. This is I hate you. I'll never forget one of the times we were online. We were in what we call the crack house. That was one of my brother's rental properties, and one of my line brothers who just was always scared. And again, I get it. You know what I mean? Now, back at that time, I hated him because he was always scared, and I wanted him to drop.
Yeah.
But I totally get it now, and because it was a crazy environment. It's 1, 2, 3 o'clock at night. We're in college so we can better ourselves, and here we are trying to. I don't know. Anyway, I'll never forget. The dean of pledges walked in the room, and he walked past one of my line brothers, and my line brother jumped. He's always jumping. He's always scared, and it triggered our dean, and our dean was just like, and it's crazy. I know what he was thinking. What he was thinking is you're going to one day represent me, and I can't have nobody part of the frat that's weak or that's soft. And so he just went off and just said, I got to get you tough. You got to get tough. And so he just started smacking him in his face and shaking him. And then he grabbed him by the back of his shirt and by the back of his pants. And like, we talked about this later. He just flicked off. Like he said, I don't even know what happened, man. Like, I lost it. And we do know it. It's spiritual. Very. So he grabbed him by the back of his shirt. He grabbed him by the back of his pants. And he rams him towards the wall. There was a sheetrock wall, and he puts his head right through the wall. Now, at that moment, we laughed. We thought it was funny. We were like, what if he would have hit a stud? In between the sheetrock are two wooden 2x4s. If he would have hit a stud,
he could have died.
He would have, and that's how people die.
He could have died.
Yeah, that's how people die.
Oh my goodness.
So we pledge, we cross, we the noops, and it's amazing, again, as you were saying, as I gave the backdrop, all of those insecurities are covered now but amplified. You know, we would go to different campuses, and we were like rock stars. I remember I went to a campus in North Jersey, and we'd go in, and we had the boys with us. In other words, we had pledges, and we would go to a party, and we would tell the pledges, because we were good big brothers. Y'all go find a place. You offline tonight. You go find a place. I don't care where you go. Find a place to stay. You offline. And then we would go and sleep with girls from parties. And I'll never forget that next morning, one of the girls said, I won. I was like, what are you talking about you won? And she said, oh, well, when you came into the party, we all started betting who's going to sleep with you. And I was, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, you know, so this thing is starting to turn. And again, and it's funny because, like I said, you know, all of these things that we touted and or gets touted, that you believe that what is a man, it actually is a male, you know. And so I think that 1 year I probably slept with 30 different girls the year that I crossed. I got chlamydia so many different times. Can y'all handle this? I got chlamydia so many different times that I would go to the school nurse, because we were on campus, and I would tell her, like, you know, because back in that day, they had a way, the way that they would culture you. They would take the big Q-tip, or it felt like it was this long anyway, the Q-tip with and they would, you know, go in and felt like they would touch you up in here to do the culture. And I would tell the nurse, hey, I know what it. I even have the last prescription. I just need some more. I know what I have. Just give me tetracycline or whatever it is. I'm good. And I remember one of the school nurses, like, she had tears in her eyes, and she said, baby, what's wrong with you? Like, this isn't normal. Like something is wrong. And I realized that my addiction to porn had now become addiction to sex.
Right.
And really that addiction was just, I wanted somebody to want me, somebody to love me. I felt like, you know, I thought I was conquering them, but I actually was being conquered, but I was really wanting to be loved. And this was what we did. We would go from school to school, and we're hazing, and my name is the preacher. You can't go there. It used to be alien because of the shape of my head when I was online. I hated that. And that's also the crazy part. So when you're online, you get degraded and defamed, and
they do.
I literally know. You know, there's one of my line brothers who hated Tony, who was my dean, which also was interesting too, because Tony and I were best friends, and so he would do things when I was online to prove to people that I'm actually going to be harder on Teddy. So, like, you know, just out of nowhere, smack me in the face, just crazy dumb stuff. But anyway, that I know one of my line brothers today that still hates the dean, who's a pastor now, because this is spiritual. Like, even some of the stuff that's said to you, it's almost like a demonic word of wisdom, word of knowledge. Like, how would you know to push that button or to call me that or say those things? Because you're not just speaking on the outside to me. You're touching stuff that people can't see. And so oftentimes, like, guys come out of line hating the very person that pledged you, even though we're supposed to be brothers. So my line name was, like I said, it was Alien prior to, and then now that I'm sexy, I'm the preacher. And so, you know, even, you know, you'd have the greeting, and my greeting was, greetings, big brother, the preacher. They would say, lay hands upon my brittle bones. Preach to me, for without him, we would be alone. And then I would beat you. I'll never forget.
Right after that.
Oh yeah, we'd sing "We've Come This Far by Faith" while I'm hitting you with a cane. Or my thing was laying hands. So I would hit people on their naked backs, and by the third time I hit you, I could have you bleeding.
How hard was them hits?
It was crazy. I can still do it. It was crazy, you know. And again, and what does that remind you of? That reminds you of getting whipped by the master. And it's funny because I remember somebody did that to me when I was online, and I didn't like it, but then I said, I'm a master that.
Ooh.
I'm gonna do what they did to me, but better. So I was the preacher. That was my line name. I remember that when I was dating Pastor Dawn, when I was dating my girlfriend at the time, that some of the line brothers would come to her and say, who were Christian, please tell him to stop. Like, please tell him to, like, this is sacrilegious. Like, like, I don't think the Lord is pleased with what's happening here. So we were, we were terrors, and again, it's still being tormented on the inside because it's like we're playing out this game, this role that we feel like is making us men, but it's really just exposing the fact that we're empty. Oh my and so like I said, that year I'm pretty sure it was around 30 different women that I slept with, and many venereal diseases, and many abortions, that I paid for, and so it was amazing because it really got to a point. So now it's my senior year, and my mother. So we actually lived. So we lived on campus, and then after we pledged and crossed, my parents had a rental home right next to her house. So we called it the Kappa house. So it was me, my frat brother. So it was three of us, and somebody who wanted to pledge, which was the stupidest thing. Why would you move into that was crazy. He was actually my cousin. So he actually lived with us, and he wanted to pledge. So we actually were pledging him before he was on. It was bad. We were wearing his clothes. And anyway, and I remember that. So here's my senior year, and I remember I have an academic scholarship. And let me go back to when I was online. So I have an academic scholarship, and I had to keep a 3.5? I had to keep a 3.5 grade point average. And one of my professors, because during that time I wasn't going to, I wasn't going to class, or if I was in class, I was just there asleep. Right. One of my professors was a Kappa, and he saw me. He knew I was online, and he knew I wasn't, doing any of the work or what have you. And I literally gotten to the point where I needed, was it 100? I needed an A to get on my exam in order to pass the class. And if I would have failed that class, I was going to lose my scholarship. So I'll never forget. So here it is. I cross. The actual professor is a Kappa, and he saw me when I was online. And so now I've crossed, and now it's the end of the semester, and now here's the exam, the accounting exam. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm getting ready to fail this. And then I remember, he's frat. And so I looked at him, and during the exam, and he just glanced over at me, and I gave him the distress signal. And then he looked at me, and he gave it back to me. And so all that meant was, nope, I need you. And basically he said, okay. So okay. So I get up. This is during the exam. I go across the room to a girl that liked me, and I looked at her, and I took her paper, and I was like, "Come on, man, I need you to be there. I need you to be there. I need you to be there for me. Come on now." So I took her paper, and like everybody in the room is watching this, and so I go back, and I'm looking at her, I'm looking at him, and I went ahead and I copied her paper word for word, and then I go and I gave it back to her. I said, and I sat back down, and he looked at me, and I shot him the yo, and he just did like that. And the class went ballistic. People went up to the professor at the end and were like, "Hey, I saw that. Whoa, did you see he just cheated?" And the professor was like, "Sit down, I don't know what you're talking about." 3 of those young men that were in that room were at the next smoker. No, because they were like, "Yo, I saw what you did. I want that power." And again, this is just it's crazy. But so here we are, and watch this. And even with all of that, I'm still about to lose my scholarship because not all my teachers were frat, right? And so I'm about to lose my scholarship. We were doing a whole lot of foolishness. We were bringing girls into the room, into the Kappa house. I'll never forget that during that time, one of my girlfriends, or a girl that I met after being a Kappa, matter of fact, that was the girl that told me that she won the bet. So I made her my girl, quote unquote, whatever that is. So we're dating each other exclusively, I guess. And she tells me, oh, well, you know that one of my girlfriends, one of my good friends, that she dates your frat brother. I was like, oh, okay, cool. And she was like, you know, she's a bisexual stripper.
Oh.
I was like, what? Like, I don't think he knew that. And she was like, oh yeah, he is. And so I go to my frat brother who we crossed the line together, and I said to him, yo, Noop, yo, I just heard your girl is gay. And he was like, what? And I said, yo, man, I heard she's a bisexual stripper. And my girl knows your girl and told me that your girl likes girls.
You was messy.
And so I was very messy.
Let me tell you, we was messy in that culture. We was messy in these orgs.
And so he actually was like, yo, good looking out, Noop. Thank you. And he breaks up with her. And so I go on about my business, and, you know, some of the things. So these are the shenanigans that we're doing, because I was sharing with you, I almost lost my scholarship, and I almost got kicked out of the house for stuff like what I'm about to tell you. So we would have girls that would always come. We're supposed to have girls in the rooms, so, or even in the house. So we'd have girls that would come over. Like, it was the known place for girls to come through, and they knew if you go into the Kappa house, you gonna play truth or dare. So we would have just groups come in or what have you. And so one night we heard that the Zetas were coming through, and like, all right, bet, whatever. And so Zetas come through, and there was one particular girl there who was really attractive, and it felt like she was on me a little bit, you know. Of course, back in the day, you think everybody's on you. And so we're like, all right, well, and I was trying to get my frat brother to take truth or dare, to, you know, like, pick us. So we got to go do truth or dare. So we go back in the back, and she just says to me, so do you know who I am? It's like, no, I don't know who you are. And so she told me her name, and she let me know that she was the bisexual stripper. She was my girlfriend's friend, who I inadvertently didn't realize that I told on her with my frat brother, and he stopped dating her. Right. And so she said, I'm such and such. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I felt like I was in trouble at first. And so she said, and yeah, I heard about you, you know, from, and she named my girlfriend because they were friends. And she said, so I came to find out. Ooh. And I'm like, okay. So without getting graphic, we were intimate.
And with you and the bisexual stripper.
Yeah, right there. Yeah. So without
right there.
Right there. So without being graphic, my wife's in the room. Don't get me killed. Yeah. So we were intimate, and again, like what? Yeah, I'm just saying, like now, but just think, and I'll also tell you this, that just kind of like the mental place that I had gotten to was just so dark. Now here's the part I didn't tell. So the girl, the Zeta that brought her, was actually there last weekend, and we did Truth or Dare, and we went in the back and did something intimate. And she was liking me because of that. But then now the next week she brings this other girl, and I go in the back with this girl, and then people can tell that something that shouldn't be happening is happening in the room, and everybody looks at her because everybody knew that she was in the room with me last week, and now he's just crazy.
Yeah.
So
but this is the fruit, though, right?
This is the fruit.
And we are saying we're also Christian organizations.
Supposed
right?
to, yeah, built on Christian principles.
Christian
yes.
principles.
So, and quite frankly, this is part of the culture. People can say what they want to say, and we'll go deeper in a minute, because, like I said, this is the fruit. This isn't the root. So again, so I'm now in a really, really, really dark place. I'm just sharing this from that perspective. And so she becomes my girl, because so what happened is the young lady that I was dealing with that told me about this one, that one told what she did with me to her. Oh, so she breaks up with me and is heartbroken. I can't believe you but I'm foul. You understand what I'm saying? I'm just a foul dude at this point in time. And so I was cool. So all right, well, I'm gonna be with you now. So I'm I guess in a dating relationship with the bisexual stripper, and she actually, of course, we understand, like, she was a nice person. You know, I mean, like, for real. And it's funny because even in that state, I'm trying to pastor her. You know, I'm counseling her. I'm trying to find out why are you with girls, and you know, and she shares with me that, you know, that she was molested by her uncle, and I'm kind of like trying to heal her, through this process. And even though we're doing things that we're not supposed to do, she would come in and want to strip. Like, no, you don't do that for me. I'm just trying to tell you, don't do that. Like, I want you for who you are. Don't you strip around. You're not a stripper with me.
Just manipulation in a sense.
But even just the perversion of me being who I am, trying to be that even then.
Got it.
And so like literally, like we were seeing each other, and she would come down, and she had a good paying job, and she was a stripper. So she actually stripped, and she went to Seton Hall. And so she was very attractive. So so I'm looking, I'm saying I'm looking like I'm the man when I'm on campus, and she'd come to my classes and sit next to me, and you know what I'm saying, don't go to the school, but to sit next to me, and I'm rock star,
Right.
And it was crazy because, like I said, this was a point where I felt like everything's just like I'm dark. Like I felt it. Strangely enough, probably like a week after that, my mother calls me to the house, and I come over to the house, and like I said, like my scholarship is on the line. She basically was telling me like, yo, like we about to kick you up out of here because you are disrespecting our house, disrespecting the rules. And then she walks me over. We, in Black families, sometimes they have them big mirrors. So she walks me over to the mirror, and this scared me. She said, and I don't even recognize you. She said, look in the mirror. And, side note, my father, who passed 2 years ago, dark skin like me, I don't know. Still got to find out what it was. I don't know if it was Cherokee. Black people always say you got Indian in the family. But my father had the most beautiful. Can I say that right? He had the most beautiful hair. And again, plus we don't love ourselves. But anyway, but my dad's hair is like, oh, you got pretty hair too. My dad's hair. And like his mother had. That's what I said. Somebody had Indian, but my father's hair is about this long. And he could do like this, and then it would just flop over.
Oh.
So he had to, back in the day, he used to get teased. Because remember, he was born in 1925. He used to get teased for his hair because it wasn't kinky.
Yeah.
And so he would put pomade. Remember the pomade? He would put the pomade on it to keep it down because they would tease him because his hair looked like a white man's hair. And so back to my point of the story. So I put what's it called? The texturizer. Come on, somebody. So I had texturizer, and it's funny. It was something that me and my frat brother Tony we would do. Once we discovered the texturizer, we would let our hair grow kind of long and then put the texturizer in it. And it actually reminds me of a scene from Malcolm X. Remember when Malcolm had the chemicals in his hair? Yeah. And we would see who could keep him in the hair long enough. Because the longer you keep it in, the straighter the flyer it's going to be.
Like the temptation.
And so I just said that to say that my mother, when she pulled me over to the mirror, she said, look in the mirror. And I looked in the mirror, and I saw this dude with a goatee and dark bags underneath his eyes because we ain't sleep at night. And the hair was fly though, and the fly hair that was swooped over to the side, and I looked in the mirror, and it scared the devil out of me because I did not. And when I say I didn't recognize the person I didn't. It scared me because I didn't know who I was looking at. Yeah. And so this all happens on the same day. So I leave there, and there was this ongoing conversation that I had with the young lady that I was messing with, the stripper. And that was, I had a bucket list. And it's funny, and I really did believe, I told somebody, I used to say this out of my mouth, I don't think I'm going to make it past 21. I used to say it. I used to tell people, like, yo, man, I don't think I'm going to live long, but it's okay. Like, I'm all right with it. And I was 21 at the time. And so I literally had a bucket list. There was a list of trifling things that I wanted to accomplish because I believe, I started to feel like I don't know if I'm gonna make it past 21. I'm okay with it. So I have a bucket list, and one of my things that I wanted to do before I died, I wanted to be with 2 women at the same time. But again, and I didn't just make that up. I mean, that's what the Noops did. Oof. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I'd been in places where, I walk in a room and dudes with 2 women and guys are telling me, yo, man, it's fly, you got whatever. And so, like I said, I really started to feel like I had like kind of a death sentence. And so I'm just having conversations with her, and I was just like, like, I know you got a girlfriend. We normally don't talk about your girlfriend, but why don't we all get together? And so I'm talking to my mother. I'm having this conversation with my mom, and my mother is telling me, oh, here's the other part. I also found I've never all put these all together. So I found out I didn't have enough credits to graduate. I found out that I actually I missed graduation or graduating by 2 credits. So something happened. Now, mind you, he also was Greek and the advisor, and he wrote in 2 more credits.
No.
That's what I'm saying. Like, this is why people get pulled into it, because especially on the college campus, it has power. I wasn't supposed to graduate that year, but somebody that was part of the Divine Nine, who was I'm not going to say anything else, who was over the whole thing, calls me to the office and tells me, like, you're not going to graduate. And I'm feeling sad, and he's like, but I got you. So here we are. I'm walking out. I feel like now I went ahead. So at the time I thought I wasn't going to graduate. Yeah. So I'm not going to graduate. Mom's going to kick me out. She just showed me that I don't even know who the heck I am. Maybe this will make me feel better. So I go ahead and I call the young lady, and I said, hey, like, did you talk to your girlfriend about us getting together? Like, what's up? And she says, yeah, I did. And she's cool with it. And remember in the beginning of my testimony, I talked about that I heard an audible voice from God twice. Here comes number 2. So I'm at a payphone outside of the Martin Luther King Student Center. Every black school has Martin Luther King Student Center. Out of the Martin Luther King Student Center on Delaware State College campus. And I'm talking to the young lady, and she says, yeah, I talked to her. It's good. We can all get together. And then now here comes second time in my life. This was the last time I heard an audible word from God. And the Lord now says to me, he said it 3 times. He said, you're about to go to a place where you're not going to come back. You're about to go to a place where you're not going to come back. By the second time he said it, I knew this was God. I'm crying again. I actually had the phone. I pulled it away from my ear because I'm hearing him coming out of my ears. And he says it the 3rd time, you're about to go to a place where you're not going to come back. And then I put the phone back to my ear, and I said to the young lady, please forgive me. And she said, for what? I said, because I'm never going to talk to you again. I'm sorry for wasting your time. And I hung up. And so now Tony is with me, and I'm going to lose my scholarship. I'm not going to graduate. My mom's going to kick me out of school. And the Lord just told me he's going to kill me. That's how it translated.
That's how it came
That's how it translated. That I'm maybe I dodged the bullet. I don't know. But all of this is bad. And I literally started having suicidal thoughts. I really was like, I don't want to be here. Like, I don't want to be here. And so I looked at Tony, and we walked in, and on the door it said Bible study. And I looked at Tone. I said, yo, man, I said, why don't we go in there? I said, maybe this will make me feel better. Now, there's a story I missed in my freshman year when we came into Delaware State. And like I said, after I was kind of at this rebellious state, I'm just coming right in as a freshman there, freshman orientation. And freshman orientation, one of the evenings, there was like it looked like it was an assembly outside in the street, but it was just black folks being black folks. And so we go out there, and I looked, and it was like folks, we call it a busing contest, the dozens talking about each other, grinding, grilling, I don't know what they call it. But anyway,
freestyling. Yeah,
freestyling, but they were, talking about each other.
Right.
And so I'm looking, it felt like it was about 100 people outside. And in the middle, there was a girl, and she was killing the guys. You know what I'm saying? He's winning, you know, winning the bussing contest. And I remember I looked at her. I thought she was very pretty, but she was just raw. You know what I'm saying? She's cussing and whatnot. She had on a leather sweatsuit and the gold. And so I remember I thought she was attractive. She's cute. I was like, eh. And the funny part, so that was freshman year, and I'm going to the end. And now freshman year, we kind of swapped, because now I told the whole story of, you know, the Lord just said, you're about to go to a place where you're not going to come back from. I didn't do the menage a trois. Everything is dark in my life. And then my frat brother shows me Bible study, and I said, well, let's go in there. Maybe I'll feel better. I used to know God. And so we go in, I sit in the back, and I heard a familiar voice, and I looked up, and it was that girl. It was that girl from freshman who I hadn't seen since I was a freshman, but I remembered who she was. And I looked up, and when I saw her, I actually saw me. Like, I saw me standing up in front of the Bible study teaching. I saw her transformation. I saw just the glow. She was bad. And I literally said, as I was sitting there in the seat, I said, God, if you can change her, I want you to change me. Wow. And she gave the altar call, and I raised my hand. And I really do believe that was probably the first real time that I accepted Christ. Ooh. You know, I've been in church services, all this other stuff, but I think that was the first time with my heart. And I believe that had I died prior, that I'd have went to hell. And I asked the Lord into my heart, and I accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. And then I went up and I met the young lady that was teaching. I got her phone number, and it was Pastor Dawn Winsley. I married her. And so it's interesting. And we actually still, we had a little bumpy ride, because even though I accepted Jesus Christ into my life, I still had a whole lot of stuff going on with me. Right. And so we actually started, she had a little stuff. I'm not going to tell her business. She'll talk. She had some stuff going on with her. Because she had a boyfriend when I met her. Oh. And she was kissing me and with a boyfriend. Amen.
Now,
anyway,
Pastor John.
I'll let her tell her own story.
Right, she coming up.
So we actually, so I give my heart to the Lord, and we start dating. We start continuing the Bible study. And now I will say this to all the young people that are watching, that dating is not evangelistic. Okay? So dating someone is not going to bring them closer to God. If you're not careful, it will actually take them further away. And we really were not, you know, if she was better schooled, she shouldn't have dated me. Not at the time. I'm glad how it all happened. But I was not ready to be in anybody's relation. I didn't even know. I was just figuring out who love was and who God was. And it was interesting. Even early on in our relationship, I was it's going to sound crazy, I was jealous of the fact that God had that much of her heart. Because she was celibate, you know, and she was like, I'm living for God. And it actually, I wanted what he had, because I wasn't ready. I still love Jesus, y'all, but y'all know y'all be messing up anyway. But anyway, so don't look at me like that. And so we actually really struggled, you know, in that area, you know, where we were trying to live for God. But like I said, but part of me wanted to sleep with her because there was that part of her that she was saving for God that I wanted, because I hadn't given him that same thing.
That's so good.
And so, you know, so we would fall, and sometimes, and she even got pregnant and had a miscarriage, and I'll never forget that we would actually cry out to the Lord and just say, like, it felt like that there was no roof, you know, cry out to the Lord and just say, you know, like help us, like we don't want to keep sinning, and we fell again, and she got pregnant the second time. And, you know, and it was like, and it scared me also too, because, Pastor Dawn, my wife, my girlfriend at the time, reminded me a lot of my mama. And my mother's a strong, shout out to Mom. My mother's a strong woman. They're actually both school teachers. But it also scared me. Also the backstory, my father was also very promiscuous. And he actually, prior to marrying my mother, was in an adulterous relationship with a woman and got her pregnant, and never told my mother.
Got it.
And so we didn't find out. That's why I said, remember I told you it was 6.
Yep.
So we didn't find out about Tommy until I think Tommy was 25 or 26. I think I was 9 at the time, so we found out. So it's interesting. I watched and didn't understand. That's why it's important too. Sometimes as kids, we look at what's going on with our parents and don't know the backstory. And so after my mother found out about my father's son, she actually, she didn't divorce him. They tried to, they worked it out. But my father actually, from that point on in their marriage, lived out of guilt. So he didn't lead. He actually was driven by the guilt of what he did. And I always saw my mother as a Jezebel because of that, because she was strong. I said it on Sunday, but you can't have a Jezebel unless you have an Ahab. And literally, I realized later that it wasn't that my mother took authority. It's my dad wouldn't lead because he was bound by his sin, and never got delivered from the things that he went through. And so it almost forced mom to have to be the man. But as a child, I judged her, and I was like, I don't want no strong woman. Side note, I told him this morning, I used to want an Oriental women. I was like, I want to get me a little Asian woman. Wow. I wanted to be this. I wanted to be shorter. I wanted to be shorter than me so she could wait on me and be subservient.
Oh.
Yeah, because I don't want nobody who will look me eye to eye and tell me I'm wrong or I'm right or whatever. And that's my wife, can look me eye to eye. And so I just said all that to say that, me not being at the time just fully converted and healed, after we got pregnant, I got scared and I ran. And it was interesting. So I had an intern. So after I graduated, part of my scholarship with DuPont, I had an intern. I had 4 interns all throughout school. My last intern was in Ames, Iowa. And so after I graduated, I had to go and do a 6-month intern. So I've got my girlfriend's pregnant, and I graduated, and now I'm going away to an intern that's supposed to turn into a full-time job. And I literally just made up reasons to fight with her and to, we were on again, off again. I'd break up with her and get back with her. But I was a coward, and I was afraid. I was afraid to get married. I was afraid to be responsible. And so during that time, I actually got involved in another relationship with another young lady in Wisconsin, in that area. And so I would, and then I'd be on again, off again, with Pastor Dawn, with Dawn, and I'm now in another relationship. And so in my mind, and I didn't realize that this is spiritual, because in some ways this is what my dad did, because my dad actually, when he got the woman pregnant, they put the boy away. So for 25 years, my father was in Delaware, and he went to go live with his grandparents. He didn't even live with his mother or father, because that situation broke up the home. And he lived in Baltimore, knowing that his father had a whole nother family. And it's kind of even the coloration part, because like I said, my father's dark. My brother, his name is Tommy. He died. He was dark skinned. The woman that my father was in a relationship with, she's what they called a Moor back in those days, which was Indian, black, and I think she was Italian. So she's so you would consider her black, but she could pass for white.
Got it.
So when he was born, I can show you a picture. We actually are splitting images of each other, to the point that when he finally came back into the family, he was like, "You don't need no DNA. That's your son." But he actually went and lived with his grandparents, who were Moors. He's dark skinned, and he always grew up kind of like how I did, hating his color and being aware that he was different. So anyway, I gave you that backstory. And so I did the same thing that my dad did. So I ran, and I would break up with Dawn, and then I got into another relationship, and then my mindset was, well, I'll just be with her. You know what I mean? Well, she ain't pregnant. She's pregnant. I don't want the responsibility. And then I had frat brothers telling me like, yo, man, like, do you want to? Like, like what you gonna do? And then, of course, then she gets pregnant, or she comes to me and tells me that she's pregnant. She shows me the pregnancy test. And now I got 2 women pregnant. I got 2 women pregnant, or believe that I have 2 women pregnant at the same, because that's what she showed me. And then that's when my frat brother came in. He was like, yo, man, well, you got to go out on one of them, because you don't want 2 kids, do you? So he said, I did it before. Just go ahead and just go out on one and pick one. Pick one that you're going to be with, and then maybe she'll get an abortion. The other one will get an abortion. Ooh. And it'll go that way. And the reality was that I loved Dawn. That was the crazy part. Like, even though I was, and it might even sound crazy, if you love Dawn, why you mess? I was so just, and I'm saved now. You know what I'm saying? Right. So even though I just was really, really, really messed up, and so I actually I left the young lady, and I came back home, and we were gonna get married. Wow. And so I told my brother Frank, who was my frat brother, about the situation with the other girl. And I was like, but don't tell nobody. And so he tells my mother. And then my mother calls me the night before I was supposed to get married to Dawn. And she says, Frankie told me. And I'm mad at Frank. You know what I mean? But part of me's happy, but I'm still mad. And she says, I'm not going to let you do to Dawn what your father did to me. She said, if you don't tell Dawn what's going on, I'm going to tell her. And that night I prayed. I asked God to forgive me. And I think I called Dawn. I think I didn't wait till I saw her, because we were supposed to get married the next day. And I called her because I'm away in training. And I called her and I told her. And I told her, what was going on, that I cheated on you. And there's a young lady that believes that she's pregnant. And if you could forgive me, I still would like to be married. I'd like to marry you. And she told me some things I didn't know. How about that?
Pastor Don.
Yeah, she told me some things I was unaware of while we were apart. And after the gut punch on the phone, I was like, if you can forgive me, then I can forgive you. And so the next day we got married. And so our marriage was based on forgiveness. The foundation of us getting married and was mercy. Knowing how trifling and wrong we were, but giving each other grace. Wow. And it was amazing. And so that actually was the beginning of everything that you see. And so we got married, and we got married in October the 19th. Come on, somebody. And November the 1st, we had our daughter.
Wow.
Yeah. So literally we hummed "Here Comes the Bride," because it was only just a couple of us. There wasn't no piano. Yep. And we did and we walked down the aisle, and we got married. And then we had our daughter. And I authentically accepted the call of my life, and became a licensed ordained minister. And now it's 4 years after that time, after all those things happened, and we're married. And Dawn is about to have our second child, our son. And I got a phone call. I got a phone call from one of my frat brothers, and he was like, "Hey, man, did you hear about the bisexual stripper?" Oh. And I was like, "No, like what, is she on the yard somewhere? Like what? What is she dating somebody we know? I don't what?" He said, "She died, and she died of AIDS." Oh. And so remember when God warned me, when the Lord said to me that day that I was setting up the illicit sexual act, you're about to go to a place where you're not going to come back. You're about to go to a place where you're not going to come back. You are about to go to a place where you're not going to come back. And I stopped. And the woman that I was going to be with and her girlfriend, I don't know what happened with the girlfriend, but she is no longer on the planet because she died of HIV.
Oh my goodness.
And so that is what God meant, and that's what he saved us from.
Hallelujah.
And what he saved me from. God is faithful. Yeah.
I'm speechless.
Mm-hmm.
What a testimony. Yeah. What a testimony.
So that's all connected to KSI.
What a testimony.
Yeah.
And you said the Lord, you denounced, like,
yeah.
2 years basically after you crossed, in a sense, right?
Yeah.
And because, I mean, I know we didn't necessarily fully go into it, but I mean,
you ready? Tell me when you're ready to go there.
I'm ready to go there.
Okay, yeah.
You know what I mean? The people ready to go there.
Yeah. So
this is great.
So now I believe in the Lord. I love the Lord. He heard my cry. He saved my life. He and it's funny. I remember the Lord, in my quiet time, he actually said to me, when I met you, you were dying and diseased. That life is over. This life is mine.
Ooh.
And so this is all the backdrop, because now I love God and I've seen what the Lord has done, and I want to be a vessel. I want to live for God. And it was interesting. So around this time now, I'm still a member of Kappa Alpha Psi, and I'm trying to, I'm going to be a witness. I'm gonna be a light for Jesus Christ, in KSI. And I'd find myself in gatherings, and we're at, one of the brothers would have a, what do you call it when they're getting ready to get married? Bachelor party. And I'm on the side, witnessing the folks about the love of Jesus while there's strippers around. You know what I mean? Strippers over here, and I'm trying to minister to you and tell you about Lord, and I love the Lord. And I don't drink. I don't mess with women. I love my wife, but we're brothers, and you're my brother, and I'm just trying to tell you about the Lord. And I remember so many times, especially in that scenario, one of them was like I hear all that, dude, but you right here with me. like, okay, sounds good, bruh, but you with me.
Well, let's be real.
And we're in a bond. How about that? How about that? And I started really, I started reading the scriptures, and it got to a point where every time I would open my Bible, I would see about secret societies, secret oaths. Who do you call your brother? What's done in the what's said in the dark should be shared on the rooftop. And I just started seeing, like, every time I would open up the word, I was like, yo, like, this is talking about the frat. Like, this is an idol. Like, this isn't of God. And I started, talking to some of my frat brothers and just sharing, like, hey, I'm kind of struggling with this, and what do you think about this, and what does the word say? And going, we need brothers in Christ, and we even have conversations. Well, what would happen if we let Jesus join the frat? Let's say Jesus was here. This was a conversation I had with a frat brother as I'm wrestling, and well, what do you think he would do about what do you think he would change? Like, if he got in the frat, like, would he let everybody in? Don't you think you shouldn't have to pledge to get in? You shouldn't have to give an oath to get in. You would probably wouldn't he let everybody in? Wouldn't he probably change the name? And we said, well, that sounds like the church, isn't that? so what are we doing? We had those conversations, and it was funny. Around the same time, like, I'm wrestling, I'm telling some of my frat, and we're having these conversations, and then I get a phone call from a renowned Kappa Alpha Psi member who was also one of the professors at my school, and he invites me and my wife over, and we come to his house, and he was like, "Yo, let's have dinner." And so we're talking and whatnot. And he was fly. He was fly. He was fly. He was educated, had money. You know, after we ate, we had like a course meal. After we ate, he goes, let's go over into the library. Library? Come on. You know, say, you got a library? And so then he goes, no, let the ladies go over there and talk, and we'll talk. Now, I didn't realize I'm in a smoker.
Another smoker.
I didn't realize I'm in another smoker. And so now he knew, like I said, I'm outwardly Christian now. I'm outwardly a minister to the frat. And he's like, I know you love God, and I want to introduce you to something. And he says, as you know, Elder Watson Diggs, all of the founders, you know what they were. Did you know what they are?
What are they?
They're all Masons. I was like, oh, okay, all right. And he says, now let me tell you something. He sits up. I can stand in front of a locomotive, wave my hand, and make it stop. Like, what are you, Superman? What are you talking about? And he said, you want to know why? Because I'm a Mason, and most, train conductors are Masons. So, he said, did you know that all of the sitting presidents, he was correct at the time, it's not correct anymore, all of the sitting presidents are all Masons, except for two, and those are the ones who were assassinated. And so he gives me all of these Masonic facts, and then he pulls out and he says that Freemasonry is founded on Christian principles. As a matter of fact, here is the Masonic Bible, and this is when I realized, I got him right here. And I said, well, what is this?
A Masonic Bible.
Masonic Bible, and it says Masonic Bible. It's got the Masonry symbol on them. And I said, well, what are all these first 80 pages? He said, well, this is all of the esoterics, and this is all the knowledge of Masonry. It's all right here. And I just said to him, I said, so, and this kind of did it for me. and I said to him, I said, so do you believe in this book? And he says, yes. I said, do you believe what's written in this book? And he said, yes. I said, can I have this book? And he said, sure. So I took his Masonic Bible. I went to the back of the Masonic Bible, which the Masonic Bible is a King James Version Bible with the Masonic stuff added to it.
They added into the Word of God.
They added into the Word of God, which is why I went to Revelations. And I said, can you read what it says here in this book? And he said, sure. Anyone who adds or takes away from the scriptures of this holy writ will receive all of the curses within it. And I looked at him. I closed the book. I gave him the grip. And I said, man, I'm out of here. I said, this is crazy. Y'all are tripping. I shouldn't be in this. I shouldn't be in this. And it really rocked me. And like I said, I think maybe that might have been a Sunday after that. I'm at church. And it's funny, in a way, I'm starting to feel like I felt back just lost. Yeah. Although I'm found, I started feeling just wrestling, and I'm at the altar. And now this wasn't audible, but I absolutely heard this in my spirit. I'm up at the altar at church. I'm a minister at the church, and I'm standing up at the altar, and I just heard in my spirit, I can't use you. And I didn't understand, but I understood at the same time. And I looked down and I opened my hand. I'm at the altar. I'm at the altar at church. And in my hand at the altar at church is a Kappa Alpha Psi medallion that I always kept everywhere, even at the altar at church. And I looked down and I saw the Ka Psi medallion, and I threw it down on the altar. And people and I think everybody knew who I was, and everybody even knew. My aunt would always tell me, like, that's an abomination. And remember when I told the story about Frank, and I said, oh, that's so stupid. You got branded. Who would get branded?
Ooh.
and so and I got one here. I have a brand here. I have a brand here. Kappas do everything in threes. Before I got the one that was put over my heart, the guy who went ahead of me moved, and the brand went all across his arm, and it kind of ruined the vibe. Oof. And I never got the third one that was supposed to go over my
your heart.
And so when I dropped the medallion, my aunt and everybody just screamed and cried and came up and started to pray for me because they understood he's renouncing.
Wow.
And when I was at the altar, the Lord also just said to me, that you put this ahead of me. And the Lord reminded me, because, on not a lot of occasions, but on a few occasions, because this thing Kappa Alpha Psi meant so much to me. Sometimes my wife would, well, what does Phi Nu Pi mean? What is that? And I'll never tell you the meaning of Phi Nu Pi. I will never, blood, sweat, and tears. I will never tell you the meaning of Phi Nu Pi. And the Lord told me that when you made that vow, he said, not only have you put this idol above the vow that you made to me, you also put that idol above your marital vow.
Ooh.
And I'll never forget that night, might have been that night, the Lord told me to tell your wife the meaning. Tell it, because at the altar I was done. I'm out. I'm done. And it's important. How many of you know that obedience is better than sacrifice? When you say that you're done, now obey God. Oh. And so the Lord tells me that night, go ahead and tell your wife the meaning of Phi Nu Pi. And I woke her up. I wasn't tripping. I'm going to do it. I woke her up and I said, hey, babe, remember I told you? I'll never tell you the meaning of Phi Nu Pi. It means fraternity, knowledge, and fidelity. And so she forgot it immediately. And I realized the next day I called my boy Tony, and he says and I just say, hey, yo, man, like I told him what happened at the altar, and like I said, God delivered me, and I'm done. And he got quiet, and he said, did you tell? Now this is my best friend. This is my best friend before we pledged. He knows me. I know him. And he said, did you tell Dawn the meaning of Phi Nu Pi? And as I said, when I shared this on Sunday service, I was going to lie. One, because that's what I did. And two, I knew what was about to take place because, like I said, this is not a social club. This is spiritual.
Yeah. I
was in a spiritual bond. And we'll talk a little bit more. And so I said to him, yes. I said, I did. I told her the meaning of Phi Nu Pi. He gets deathly quiet on the phone. And then he says to me, well, and I knew what he was going to say next. He said, I'm not going to feel comfortable around you anymore. He said, I'm going to tell Frank, which is my brother. He said, I'm going to tell him what you did. I knew it was coming. And he said, and I'm going to tell all the noops on the yard. And he says, so therefore, you got to watch your back.
Oh.
And I immediately responded. I said, that's fine. You could tell Frank. I said, Tony, you are my child's godfather. I said, you are my best friend. I said, man, I love you. I said, but today can be the last time we ever speak again because I'm no longer going to allow this thing to come before my relationship with God. And I said, and while you're telling, I want you to tell everybody on the yard, tell all the noops that I'm going to be, and give me about 25 minutes. I'll be outside on my house, in a lawn chair with a T-shirt, jeans, and Timbs. If anybody has an issue with me, I ain't a punk now. I wasn't a punk before. I'm not going to be a punk. I'm not looking over my shoulder. I'm not watching my back. If anybody wants to see me, come see me.
Oh.
And I put on my Tim boots. My wife is here. And I went outside and I waited and nobody came. But Tony wouldn't even let me off the phone. Tony just says, yo, man, no, wait a second. And we continued to talk. And Tony, who you met, actually later is a pastor now. He renounced, and then when you came into our life, he renounced.
Come on.
And that was how I got out the frat. And so even with that, it's been 30 years, 34 years. I forgot. I didn't realize it, but we crossed 34 years ago. And many of them don't speak to me. Many of them feel like when I got out the frat, that I actually left them. And I explained, no, y'all remember what kind of brother I was? I wasn't a good brother. Now I'm actually a better brother to you now. Now that I'm really in Christ, and I've always again just been open, but it's been a journey. And even doing this, I've already gotten, responses from some of my line brothers. One of my line brothers actually came to visit me. That was amazing. Came to church. But the other responses hasn't been so positive. Because I get it, because this is not a social club. This is a spiritual covenant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First of all, that was so good.
Yeah.
Y'all, listen, this is the reason why I felt like your testimony needed to be heard. Yeah. I really did. Just from, being, how do you say, like, walking with the Lord, having this assignment. Yeah. And we know more so than anything from coming from these organizations, the level of intimidation, how deep that oath and that bond truly is. Yeah. When we were both on the other side, we understood the severity of what that looked like if you would share the secrets. I also was legacy. Yeah. I knew what that looked like growing up. My mom would never share with me the secrets no matter what. I'm her daughter. Yeah. She never told me about any of the secret things outside of what they did externally. Yeah. And so it quite literally is a covenant that comes before your family. It comes before your relationship with God, and it comes before your friendships. Yes. If you are in a room and you can have a best friend there who didn't pledge, or a family member, you will choose secrecy to your organization over any type of other relationship that you have. Yeah. And that was also something, I resonated so much because that was something that made me want to join Delta. Because of my mom, ultimately, and what that looked like, that relationship. And it's wild that I never learned those secrets through my mom, but I learned it through going through the process. Wow. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so it's a very interesting dynamic when we talk about idolatry, period. Mm-hmm. And I was going to ask you before we transition to bring Pastor Don up here, how did you go from, and you know what? Yeah. Maybe we should bring Pastor Don up for this one.
Before we bring her in, I want to say the one thing, part of the testimony, which brings me to you. Mm-hmm. Because prior to meeting you, if someone would have asked me, should a Christian join a Greek letter organization, I would share my testimony. I would share with them what God did for me, that God called me out. It was an idol to me. I would share with them all the different scriptures, and then I would tell them that, guess what? It's personal. It's based on you and the Lord. Okay, because all I had was my scriptures, what the Lord told me to get out, right? What God told me to get out, and even though I shared all of the things about the fraternity, that's not the root at all. That's not the root. That's just fruit. That's just dirty fruit. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't until, like I said, we were doing a series called Ruining Idle Words. And in that series, Ruining Idle Words, we were talking about types of idle words. And I brought up the fraternity. And there's a passage of scripture that I read, Matthew chapter 12, verse 34. And even there are pastors I've seen on podcasts that, talk about all the different scriptures that people use. It doesn't really apply in context and this and that. Well, here's a scripture that, please somebody jump around this. Jesus himself said, Matthew chapter 12, verse 35, he said, the good man from his inner good treasure flings forth good things, and the evil man out of his inner evil treasure flings forth evil things. But I tell you, on the day of judgment, men will have to give an account to every idle, inoperative, non-working word that they speak. For we either believe this or we don't. For by your words you will be justified and acquitted, and by your words you will be condemned and sentenced. I was ministering this series and talking about different types of idle words, ungodly oaths, and then I saw you on social media, and you gave me the missing piece to complete my theology. on this matter because it was incomplete because I didn't have all the information. Yeah. Because what you gave me was you showed me my ritual that I forgot 30 years ago, 34 years ago, because I know for Kappa Alpha Psi, it is a practice that after you become a member and you say the oath and you go through the ritual, first of all, why are we even arguing with pastors about rituals and pledging? After you go through the ritual, they take the book.
Oh.
So at the age of 20, I went through this ritual. I said this oath, and then God calls me out, but I never put the two together because I couldn't remember that there was something that I spoke out of my mouth that the Bible says that by your words you will be justified or acquitted, and by your words you will be condemned and sentenced. And you shared on social media, and I thank God for you. You shared the ritual, and it all flooded back to me. I forgot, and then I even called my brother, and he actually reminded me some things that I forgot. But I forgot that we did get on our knees because it's in the ritual book. We did put our hand on a Bible. If you follow the ritual, it tells you there's supposed to be a Bible there. You put your hand on the Bible. In the ritual, and my brother said, "Do you remember the noose?" The noose. He said, "Yeah, we put nooses around you because it's part of the ritual." I remember that in the oath and in the ritual, it was all about the god of Adelphi, which is Apollo. We were considered barbarians. So this was an actual skit that gets played out during the ritual. We were barbarians. We had to strip down to our waist. And we're barbarians and we were unworthy. But the god of Adelphi, who in the ritual did his little dolphin thing and swam, and he came and he saved us and he made us worthy to receive the knowledge. And I did have to eat a cracker over a flame. It was, and I did, it's in the ritual. Read your rituals. I did out of my mouth. I pledged to God, whoever he is, in the ritual, and I pledged to the god of Apollo. It's in the ritual. And so when you brought that last piece, the information, now I understand why God told me to get out. And now it actually does change, because I would just, prior to that, I'd say, hey, it's personal. Let me show you all the scriptures, what God did in my heart, why he told me to get out. But I forgot, and all the other stuff of my testimony about the pledging, the hazing the women, okay, that's the byproduct. But as a believer, Jesus says it is problematic for us to say out of our mouths and commit a ungodly oath and covenant ourselves with any other god, whether you believe in that God or not. If you said it, Bible says whatever's in abundance of your heart, your mouth speaks. Right. You are binding yourself to something. So good. And so I we can bring Pastor Dawn in, but I wanted to share that part because that really is the end of my testimony.
Oh, so good.
When you gave me the missing piece. And so if unbeliever, hey man, I wouldn't do it if I was you, but there's a lot of stuff you're gonna do that I wouldn't do if I was you.
Right.
But for someone that names the name of Christ and wants to live for God, I just read the red letter edition. I just read the words of Christ. It is problematic for a believer to speak an ungodly oath. Later for the hazing, people say, oh, well, some chapters do this and so. You're right, they do. But every chapter, every organization, and then, of course, where are we all getting this from? And we could talk about that later. It is all connected to Freemasonry. Freemasonry is the grandfather of the father. It is the it is where the culture of all of this comes from. Say what you want to say, but if you study, you'll actually see it.
My goodness. This was so good. I am so grateful.
Amen.
Because I'm telling you, I had no clue why the Lord was telling me to get on Abednego. It was Abednego's podcast. to share the information about Kappa Alpha Psi, you know, it is, I was like, I talk about Delta, you know, I'm like, why are you having me do this? You know, I would have much rather, you know, another man, you know what I mean, come in to do it, which I honestly think you are going to take that baton and to do it. This is why it was so important for, you know, and this was why it was so important to get your testimony out, because you guys, I actually have never on my platform actually promoted another pastor, another church, or anything of that sort, but I have absolutely fallen in love with the family church in New Jersey. I have gotten to meet them. I've seen their fruit behind the scenes. I have watched their testimonies. I have watched their sermons. And when I tell you, sound teaching, and it's actually really interesting, because that last piece that the Lord, because when I tell you the work that they've already done in the body of Christ, amazing. But when God is pulling on people to denounce and pulling on them to break that last little spiritual bond or covenant. When I tell you the way that the Lord is about to catapult this ministry and what he has already done, the fruit that he has already done in your church is spectacular. I mean, it says that you will know them for how they love one another, and the love that I experienced in your ministry, the love that I experienced in your church between the two of you guys. I mean, it felt like when me and my husband met y'all, it was like we was family. That's why we was eager to come back up here again, right? But no, I am so happy that you shared that piece, because there are a lot of people who have come out and they have tried to, in a sense, say, okay, well, you know what, like, that was a personal conviction for me, right? Even, that's why I'm happy that Pastor Don just came to the stage, which is so amazing. This is Pastor Don. This is the wife to Pastor Ted Winsley, the Winsleys here. But I was going to share this piece, and then I want to intro it into Pastor Don, because we actually went to a very well-known on fire church. Very on fire, very sound, all of the things. And the co-pastor, or I would say I guess he's a part of the executive leadership. He preaches when the other pastor isn't there. He was also a member of Kappa Alpha Psi. Okay. And it was very interesting, because we're going there thinking that we were going to hear the main pastor, all of the things, but this co-pastor, he's actually on stage preaching. And I was like, this is crazy, because this was during the weekend that we had our revival in Atlanta that we were wanting y'all to come down to. And so we had a lot of ex-Greeks that were with us that ended up coming to that church service, because I was actually doing a podcast out of that church. And it was interesting, because the Lord set it up where that specific pastor, who was a part of Kappa Alpha Psi, the Lord had set it up for us to talk with him. After the service. And so we go back there, and then we had found out that he denounced. And so I was so happy to meet him and all of the things. And this is going to make sense for you, the two of you, to expound on it. But when we met him backstage, it was very strange, because there wasn't any like love. You know what I mean? Which was really interesting. But the most interesting piece about everything was, when we started to talk about Kappa, or we started talking about denouncing, there was like a disconnect that was taking place, even though he said he denounced. And so it was interesting, because he was kind of put on staff as the pastor. He had all his Kappa stuff on, and there was actually no one in executive leadership that ever, I guess, corrected him. It was members of the congregation. And this is after he had been pastoring for a minute, all of the things. And so members of the congregation kept talking to him about it. But it was interesting when he brought it up to us, when he said that he had that moment where he surrendered and he, you know, brought all his stuff. He like patterned it like, well, he's kind of irritated by how people are coming out publicly. Even though he denounced, it's more so like, I can't really tell you if it is a heaven or hell issue. You know what I mean? I just know, maybe for me, you know what I mean? Like, it's something that, you know, he also admitted to the hazing he went to, or he chalked, and how much he wanted his child to, you know, join, and he was putting his children in future Kappa stuff, and he kind of brushed it off as like idolatry just with him, you know. And he also said he doesn't know if he would ever preach about or say anything about it publicly.
Yeah.
Now, this is a church that talks openly about witchcraft. They talk about everything else. But this particular topic, it was almost like he didn't really even want to like, he seemed like he was actually irritated that he had to come out. Like, that's what it was. Wow. It wasn't given that, okay, this was, you know, something that, you know, I went through scriptures about is serious, because even if we're saying, if we're ultimately saying we don't know if this is a heaven or hell issue, and you're, in my opinion, in one of the most powerful pulpits currently, right? Wow. Do you not owe it to yourself to find that out?
Sure.
Right? If that's a very serious thing that Jesus will call you out of. Yeah. And so it was so interesting to share your testimony, because you shared the process of going from personal conviction to know for sure this is a serious situation that I can unequivocally say no believer should travel this path nor be in this unequivocally. And this is my recommendation as a pastor to say openly and publicly. I think you were actually one of the first people that I saw in a pulpit that was willing to openly denounce it in that way. And then we would see Travis Green, different people,
and
but to
I was
do that line.
Scared. How about that? Like even though I back to your point, I denounced so long ago. In that moment, like I said, I think I'd shared that I still had one piece of paraphernalia that was a paddle, and God was like, "Get rid of it." And even I said the meaning of finding pie on this podcast. That is something that, and that's how you know it's spiritual. Yeah, you know, because first of all, it ain't nothing. But
what is
that? Yeah,
it's almost like, you know, in a marriage, how you feel like you're like breaking that covenant when you're sharing something personal between you and your spouse.
Sure.
That's what I felt when coming out of this.
I spoke to my blood brother, and I showed him your video, and he was like, I get it, but that was petty. That was petty of her sharing all the stuff. And I said, so is that a Kappa speaking or a believer speaking? Ooh. And he got quiet, and he said, no, I get you. And so that's why this thing is so serious, because it is that divisive, because it is spiritual.
That's so good.
Which I like I said, it just, you know, and especially, you know, I've heard pastors who are not Greek, who've never gone through it, which is okay. They absolutely can speak on it, but you got to speak on it with knowledge.
Come on.
And so my point is, hey, pastor, sir, ma'am, look at the rituals. So again, just even as a believer, that one scripture, it should do it enough for you. You know what the scripture says. You know what Jesus says. It is what our whole faith is based on our words. How about that? And the way that I joined Kappa Alpha Psi, if anyone wants to know, I believed it in my heart, and I had to say it with my mouth. If you don't say the oath, you don't become a member, period. We ain't talking about hazing or paddling. If you don't say the oath, you don't become a member. Why? Because belief happens through confession. Yeah. So you believe and you confess, and there's a covenant. That's how I became a believer, and that's how I became a Kappa.
With all of your love, your peace, and your happiness, may it be in my heart, my soul, through blood, sweat, and tears.
So again, just the pastors who have never, you know, experienced that, they can speak on it, but you got to get some knowledge. Check out the rituals. Check out, you know, if you're a husband and your wife is in it, check out her rituals. She might not let you see them. How about that? Check out the rituals and then compare it to scripture, and you'll probably be quiet, or you'll say what I'm saying, because there's nothing else to say, because it's just the word.
It is. And we cannot sit in these pulpits as pastors, as spiritual leaders, and claim that we don't know what are heaven and hell issues. Yeah. Why then are we being entrusted to lead entire flocks of people? Do we not know that we will receive the harsher judgment?
Yes.
Even Paul looks and says, are there any spiritual amongst you that is able to rightfully discern and judge a matter? I will tell you, going through these ritual books, it's not that hard to find. Yes. If it was a witchcraft or a Wicca book, we could unequivocally say that. But you can't tell me that when we're saying, I pledge my unswerving allegiance to the God of Adelphi and the well, like, we got to be for real. Yeah. We can't say that this is a joke that is light. as pastors. I expect those who are not pastors, who are just members of the flock, to possibly not know that. But how can we sit in one of the highest spiritual authorities that God is ultimately given to lead and to shepherd his children, and we cannot tell them whether something puts their life or their soul in jeopardy, and believe that blood will not be on our hand, as it states in Ezekiel, you, O son of man, you warn those. How can we believe that we will not stand before God accountable, right? Because if David was accountable for just taking a census of the people, and his people, over 60,000 people, as we see in the book of Chronicles, literally were swiped out because of one disobedience that David personally did. I mean, how in the world, if we as mothers and fathers, if our children stand accountable for our personal actions and things you went through, that bloodline, and we could clearly see how the enemy was wanting you to live out the same bloodline situation, how do we believe as leaders over a flock, that we won't stand accountable for the way that we shepherd people, and to how we lead them accountable, and they're asking real questions. They want to know truth, and we're leading them with confusion. We're leading them with confusion. When does God call you out of something and clearly say it's idolatry, and doesn't call someone else? We're not talking about whether you should eat ham or steak, right? We're talking about covenants that all of us unequivocally made together, and it's impossible with the way that the process is in these organizations for it to not be an idol, because the hoops you go through to even try to pledge, that's impossible.
And then even realizing, like I said, as again, something that you opened my eyes to was just the realization, I'm a Q dog, I'm a Kappa man, I'm an Alpha man, I'm a Sigma man, I'm a Delta, whatever.
Woman,
and initially I thought that these were all stereotypes. Where, the Kappas are the pretty boys and they smooth, and the Qs, they're wild and rough like dogs. And then you've got the Alphas, they're intelligent and, whatever, studious. And then you've got the Sigmas, and they're wild. I don't know. But then, like I said, even this is something just to help pastors, why you got to study and understand that this is spiritual. So, the shimmy and all the different sexual stuff, and even the ideology, it all goes back to the oaths and the gods. And understanding, when you study it, this is where you help me, when, like I said, all I could remember was we said to the god of Adelphi. And I was like, I didn't know who was the god of Adelphi. And like I said, even though I didn't remember it, I did say the name Apollo. I pledged to Apollo. But then finding out that Apollo, tell me, who was Apollo?
Yes, so a demonic god. A demonic Greek god. No, he was actually one of the 12 Olympians.
Yes.
Which, when we think about that, they are known in Greek mythology as having fights with the Titans. They beat the Titans. Which actually Atlas, who's over AKA, was one of the Titans, which is why it has to carry that ball on the back, right? And so,
the quintessential man is when I looked it up. He was a quintessential man.
He was.
He was
bisexual too.
It talked about that he was very sexual, and it went on further that he was a bisexual. He loved women and he loved men.
Was known for slaying his suitors. Was very jealous. Also partnered with the Muses and the Graces, which were 9 small deities because of beauty. All of those things.
So pretty to my left, pretty to my right. I'm so pretty I can't sleep at night. We're not conceited. All those things. They're not stereotypes. We're actually playing out the demonic deity's nature, and unbeknownst to us, because we're more beholden to being black, and this ain't even black, and because we don't know our identity, and we've actually turned a relationship into a religion. Because if this is a relationship, then you should be able to realize that this is spiritual. But when it isn't, when it's just another religion, well, then you just add religions. And so, so again, just all of that, pastors, I challenge you to study. And so it helped me. That's why I said
the oracle situation, which is
Yes.
In the Bible, right?
Yes.
Because Apollo is very famous of basically shapeshifting to a dolphin, leading a ship to the shores, which are called the Golden Shores, which is why when Kappas pass away, they say, go to the Golden Shores. We'll see you in the Golden Shores, which is supposed to be a archetype in the sense of heaven.
And when I called Nationals, I called them not 30 years ago, so that they got another process now. But when I called them 30 years ago, I just said, hey, bro, I called Philly, and I said, hey, I just want you to take me off the roll. Like, I no longer want to be considered a member. And he just stopped me, said, hey, bro, you made an oath. And so again, this is the thing, and this is what stopped me in my tracks, and all the pledging, the hate. Now, that's not what it is, believers. It's right here where the rubber meets the road about the ungodly oaths, the covenants that we make with our mouth. So when I called him and I said, hey, I want to get out, he reminded me that I made an oath. And he says, and we're not taking you off. I think they did take me off now. He said, but we're not taking you off. He said, and when you die, you're going to chapter invisible. I said, what is chapter invisible? And so he was speaking about you're going to go to the because it's spiritual pastors, it's spiritual ministers. It's not a game. It really is real.
Right.
And like I said, and so I asked him, I said, are you a believer? He said, yeah. I said, do you believe? I said, show me verse in scripture where you can find that in the Bible that when I die, I'm going to the Golden Shores. I'm going to chapter and visit.
Right.
And then we wound up just getting off the phone.
That's what it is. Because it's so wicked. You go to these Golden Shores and then they imprison you to become priests for the mighty oracle,
he was a priest.
Of Delphi. Yes. Delphi was an island, and there would be this demon-possessed woman that you see in the Matrix, that you also see in the Bible, the woman that's following Paul around, talking about, oh, this is a man of a most high God.
So these were the same spirits. These were the same idols that Paul, that the apostles that we love and desire to follow out the same path as they obeyed Christ. They had to fight those same demons. Yeah. And so here we as pastors struggle with it because it's connected to being black.
Yes, because Apollo needs pastors, need priests. Yeah. And this is why there are so many Kappas in the pulpit. Yeah. Because that deity attaches. It's crazy. It's
a lot of Kappas that are pastors.
Yep. Because that deity attaches to the anointing that you already have been called to. Wow. You all have been given, because that's one of the only deities that turns their prisoners into priests for the oracle of Delphi. Jesus. And so you become an oracle for that organization. And so here they can see in the spirit what has been prophesied over you, because also that deity attaches to prophecy. That's what it does. That's what that oracle, that's what that demon-possessed ultimate woman does. And here it is, seeing who you are, wants to change your identity to use you for Kappa.
For worship.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And we were quite literally making disciples, as you would say, pastoring. Yeah. You know what we was doing in a perverted way to the line underneath us, giving them the type of knowledge. We were doing that for the enemy when the Lord wanted you to do that for him. And so even when he shares with you, man, I can't use you in a sense, just how with this, because you're being used.
Yes. So I can't use you. Yeah.
Well, this is, hey, we hope that in itself was a revelation, right? So, y'all, we brought the beautiful wife of Pastor Ted, Pastor Don here. We just want to welcome you. People also don't know your story, so I just wanted you to have an opportunity to share. I know we can't fully go into your whole testimony, but I know that you have a lot to share, because you embody what it means to be a godly wife, because you were not playing with your husband in this area, right? And I want you to share, because I do believe that there are a lot of women who are watching this right now, and they want to know, how do I contend for my husband who is in this organization? How do I pray for them? What does that mean to be a strong, godly wife that the Lord endows his wisdom? And it's like, no, I desire my husband who has a call in his life to be set free, like, from these things. And also some of your background in these Greek organizations too.
Yeah. So, just real quick, I have two brothers who were they're in the Greek letter organization, and so
does the mic need to come a little closer to you?
When is that better? Yeah. When my brother, my younger brother, when he pledged, I was his sweetheart. And as a sweetheart, we have an opportunity to help the pledgees.
So that's an auxiliary.
It's an auxiliary, yeah. So so there were things that we had to go through, just even being in an auxiliary, and just even helping my brother go through that process. And and there was an attachment. We were down with the brothers, and and we did everything possible for his pledge process to be what he wanted it to be. And, almost to the point where my older brother, who pledged my younger brother, I would get upset with him anytime he would come to town, because there was that, what they call sets. And, they would say, "Good night, sweethearts," "Good night." They would sing the sweetheart song, "Good night, sweethearts, good night." And I was like, "No, I don't want to leave," because I knew once we left, they would really just go to town. And so, so seeing a little bit of that, and then eventually after, I think my senior year of college, I gave my life to Jesus and started a Bible study, and that's the Bible study Pastor Ted eventually came into.
Yeah.
And he gave his heart to Jesus.
And I think we had shared this testimony real fast before, but, I talked about that I hadn't come in contact with her from 3 years, but I actually inadvertently came into contact with her the year prior meeting her, after I met the young lady. The year that I met the young lady, the bisexual stripper, it was actually Del State's homecoming. Yeah. And all of my frat brothers were coming down for the step show. And so they came to my house, and I'm with the young lady, and I'm like, "Hey, y'all, get out of here." You know what I'm saying? Like, let me be me up in here. And I shoot everybody out. And Tony said, "Hey, I hear that there's some girl who is having a party at her house. We're going to go to her." I said, yeah, go to, what's her name, Dawn? Go to Dawn's house. Yeah, go to Dawn's house. Unbeknownst, that was my wife.
Right.
And and so,
go to be.
So 3 hours later, they beat back on the door, and I'm I got on my silk robe. And so I said, so I'm coming with my silk robe, like, "What are y'all doing?" And they all come in, and except when they came in, they act like they saw a ghost.
Yeah.
And I was like, what's wrong with you? Like, they were, blowing my high. I was like, "What's wrong with y'all?" And I'm like, "Yo, man, well, first of all, when we came down from Philly, we were on this road going to the campus, and there was a truck that was actually headed our way. It was on a one-way, and we were about to hit the truck, and we don't know how, but somehow it swerved at the last minute, or we swerved, and we didn't hit the truck, but we should have all died tonight. And then we came here to you, and you told us to leave, and you told us to go to some girl's party house, and we go to Dawn's house, and it wasn't a party, it was a Bible study."
Yeah.
And we all, 19 of them, gave our lives to Jesus Christ. And they're crying. I got my silk robe. They're crying and whatnot. Yeah. And my heart's still hard. I was like, "Well, that's good for y'all. Well, y'all get up out of here." But little did I know that was my wife to be, who had been radically saved, and she was just on a tear. Well, before she met me, she was just on a tear, and God was just using her to get people saved. And so it was funny, maybe last year, his name was Rico. He's a Hispanic guy who came to the church, and one of the guys who actually put his head on my chest after he saw your video and was saying, "Pastor, he's a Kappa." He's like, "Pastor, this is hard. Like, I know it's right, but this is hard." He invited this guy to the church, and he said, "Hey, I want you to meet Pastor Ted. This is Rico." I said, "Rico?" And come to find out, he was the guy that Pastor Dawn got saved.
That is wild.
Yeah. He said, "Remember me?" I was like, yeah.
That is
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah.
And that's
I'm sorry,
actually
I just
that's
wanted to
actually
say
No,
really
that was
crazy
good.
now
Yeah.
with all the testimonies of all these car accidents
Absolutely.
involving Greeks, and so
Yeah.
it's crazy to see that was something
Sure.
happening back then.
Absolutely.
But then the Lord spared their life to get them in front of you.
Yeah.
So please.
Yeah,
Amen.
yeah. So that was an interesting night. So they gave their heart to Jesus, and but even when I would say our first year of marriage, you were into it was actually when you were highly involved as a Kappa.
Yeah.
I got used to kind of being shooed away. No, you can't be in here. We need to talk. Need you to go upstairs, go in the kitchen. I was like, I'm getting sick of this. Like, how come I can't be around? Like, why can't I know what's going on? And just over, it wasn't too long of a time. I don't know how long it was when you finally, kind of denounce, but
Yeah, I think it was our second year of marriage.
yeah, probably our second year of marriage. But I remember the struggle that he was going through, and he would share with me. And I think the closer we started getting to Jesus and our relationship, then that's when he started getting further away from Kappa Alpha Psi. And I remember
you can't
that
serve
day,
two masters.
and I remember that day in a church service.
Yeah.
When he said he looked down at that medallion, and I remember when he took that medallion and he threw it across the church, literally threw it across the church. And everybody's like, what is that? And I was like, it's the medallion. And I'm just rejoicing. And, because I realized I knew the struggle, the spiritual struggle that he had. And then over time, I would say to him, I get it, maybe this was just real personal for you, because that was really the only part of the story that he would say. It was for me, it was personal for me. And he would speak at different places and churches and youth groups, but it was always personal for him.
That's all I had.
Right.
I didn't remember the ritual.
And there was this little bit of something in me that wanted to pledge.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, maybe that was just for you.
Yeah.
Maybe that was for you. I can handle that, and he would always say, absolutely not. But it was never a definitive answer on why.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it wasn't until we saw your podcast.
Yeah.
And when you broke down the ritual, because that was it for me.
That's it.
And I sent that message over to him, and I said, I got
Everything
it.
stems
That
from that.
missing piece
Yeah.
that you could never explain, because again, it was always an out for people.
Yep.
It was always an out for, people in ministry. It was always, okay, Pastor Ted, that was you. You were crazy. You were out there. Versus, no, this is the reason why. Yeah. Read these. This literally goes against the word of God. But I do thank God, because the little bit that you had was enough to deter me from, moving forward,
I wasn't gonna let you.
Right.
Delta.
But there's so many people.
I wasn't. You ain't gonna be my wife, and I'm out, and you joined. It ain't happening.
But over time, I'm thinking of so many people that have, were able to say no. Even you saying, hey, that was just for me.
Sure.
It was still like,
I would say
that was enough.
Let me show you what spoke to me.
Right.
And now it's personal to you.
Yeah.
But I could not definitively say that a Christian should not pledge a Greek letter organization. And then it's so funny, because then you'll even have pastors to make the point, but they shouldn't be Masons. What are you talking about?
Right.
It's all interconnected. One actually comes from the other. So that's why I said that's why it was so profound when you gave us that piece that was missing.
And I think even some of the language that's used, kind of like when your eyes get open, even if you didn't go through the rituals, because you're not a part of the organization, what is the divine?
Yeah, all of the
Nine.
language.
And we're pledged. Every person in the Divine Nine has to be a part of the Pan-Hellenic Council.
Yeah.
And the
Multiple
burning
guys.
Hellenic. Multiple guys.
Hellenic, which was the Hellenism that they dealt with in the book of Acts, where they had a group of Hellenistic Jews. These were people that practiced Greek customs and traditions as Jews, and they had an issue with some of the Hellenic, that was actually the reason that they had to have the deacons coming to the church because they were treating like some of the Hellenic, Jews different than the others. It was like a whole thing. And here we are also now because bonded through the Pan-Hellenic Council and the Divine Nine. But we love to say, no. Oh, that might have been your organization or that might have been your organization. Sure. But then we're the Divine Nine.
That's
so there is still a
Hellenic
yoking we have with the other organizations.
And then not to mention, I've even heard people make the comment to say, well, I said it, but I didn't mean it. And again, like I said, I totally get it for people who are not believers. But if you are a believer, and I said this to one of the members here, I said, from a spiritual perspective, is it possible, you are a speaking spirit, is it possible for you to say something, and this is a trick question, is it possible to say something out of your mouth that you don't mean and not mean it? And I said, well, let me help you. It is possible to say something out of your mouth that you don't mean and not mean it, but you can't do it twice.
Right.
Because also realizing, yes, it is true that whatever's in abundance of your heart, your mouth will speak. Yeah. But then also understand that you have the ability to speak to your heart.
Yeah. Very good.
So this is also the other issue. This is why Jesus makes the point that he makes, and he says you will be accountable for every inoperative, idle, non-productive word that you speak. So even that whole premise of, well, I said it, but I didn't mean it, as a believer, it is still problematic because what you say has life. So you can actually speak it into your heart because you said it.
So good. Yeah. So good. And I was going to ask you guys, just transitioning, right? Because since all of this is taking place, denouncement, you coming out live and, sharing, there's been a lot of fruit that's happened at your church, and
a revival. Really, just so, and that's why I say I thank you, and this is why again, for people to actually have a problem with people, getting free again, it's really having to do with because you have a problem because you're still bound. But that's literally what we've seen, we've experienced, there, and I've had to, because we're pastors, and we like, again, let me say this, we are not condemning people, and I know even in this series where we did this part, where we're talking about ungodly oaths, like people who were connected to this were kind of just waiting for this to pass. Like, can we get past this? And my whole point was, first of all, this is not the only ungodly oath. Like, people speak all different types of ungodly oaths, but then just understanding that we're not condemning people. This whole deal is to be able to just give people the truth. Yeah. And now you are accountable.
That's it. Yeah.
And, we're done. That's it. This is not the Divine Nine bashing church. Yeah. This is the family church that speaks the truth in love. And so let me finish real fast. And so again, we've literally seen just people who were struggling, in this area, just immediately, just wants to and it's funny because that's why I just have to keep just thanking you for your obedience, because there was a cap on my influence on this topic because I didn't have all the truth. So some people were able to kind of find like the gray area or the wiggle room, until I was able to say no. Yeah. And here's biblically why. Yeah. Now do what you want, but this is not what someone who is aspiring to live a kingdom lifestyle should be a part of. Now do what you want to. There's a lot of other stuff that we do that you ain't supposed to do, but this is one of them. And just seeing that there were some people who just got free. You know what I mean? Influential members who actually made other members in our church who just, that was it. They were waiting for truth. And once they saw it, they couldn't deny it. And, just countless people are getting free.
Yeah. Yes. Now I was going to say, I think when Melissa started bringing up spiritual things about the organization, like saying words like altar and kneeling and divine nine and, you know, deities. Like now it became a spiritual ceremonies, vows. It became a spiritual matter.
It is spiritual.
And so, but as pastors, like when we ministered, we said we have a right to speak on this matter. We have a responsibility. We have a responsibility, and for pastors that aren't willing to engage these types of conversations from, you know, really getting to the root, we're doing the people a disservice. And I'm gonna tell you, Melissa, it does not feel good. There's so much backlash that we receive.
Sure,
there are members whose worlds are just wrecked up, you know, like people getting offended, telling us
somebody told us that we are putting our church in bondage by bringing you and having this discourse. What?
Wow.
what? She's that powerful?
and being in Christ means we can do whatever we want. Huh?
Yeah, right.
Like I had shared before on
what is that?
when you came and we did the live interview. What I shared before was when I look around, you know, all of the surrounding churches here in New Jersey.
Many.
Yeah.
I'll say many, not all.
90%, you know.
I'll give you 90.
And they know. That's why there's no conversation about it, because they're in Greek-led organizations. Yeah. Either it's the pastor or the pastor's wife, or it's both of them. Yeah. And, you know, and I think for me, somebody even looking in, trying to figure out, and I used to really question Pastor Ted, because I'm like, wait a minute, Pastor such and such said this, but maybe it is just personal for you. Maybe you couldn't handle that because, and that's what the people are doing.
Right.
Well, my bishop said, or my apostle said, or my pastor said, but what has God said?
I just showed you scripture. What did Jesus say?
And this topic, because there are so many, I'll say African Americans in these Divine Nine organizations, you risk the fact of people leaving your church. And guess what?
No, that's why.
Exactly. So that's why you got people that are quiet, spiritual leaders. Yeah. Or you have the ones that said, you know what, I'm going to say what God tells me to say, what's in the Bible, and be more concerned about their soul than concerned about being quiet because it's making them feel uneasy.
And it's very interesting with what you're saying, because you're taught one thing in the organization that now when we're speaking about this thing spiritually, it seems to be another type of flip-flop that's being taught. So now that we're speaking about these things, it's, that's just you. Right. This is individual. That don't got nothing to do with me. Yeah. But online, when your line brother did one thing, or they said another thing, we were taught to be one, to the point that I am actually disciplined. And online, I get in trouble because of what my line brother does. And as a matter of fact, if I have any other additional thought outside of the line mentality, then I was taught that was wrong. We have discretion, being a shining star, all of the different things where all individuality was beat out of you, to the point like where it's like, if you are not in alignment, that's why you were saying your former line brother, he's getting beat up, his head being put through the wall, because that's not indicative of what we believe here. But now that people are coming out, you see the real true brotherhood is on full display, or sisterhood, where it's like, that's you. You were probably a trash member anyway. We don't want you anyway. Get out. All this type of stuff that you just claimed we were in a legitimate bond and a legitimate brotherhood or a legitimate sisterhood. So now I can have independent thought of you. You speak about the bondage portion, which is absolutely crazy, setting people free. However, it's cool for you to be in underneath bondage of all of their decorum, rules, regulations. You follow and abide by all of those things.
That was a part of the oath. And the oath also said that you are not to denounce. You are not to speak against. And so if you do, well, now you ain't one of us.
Correct. But you know, when the church does anything like this, the church is ate alive. Yes. And I remember I was saying this to someone online. I was like, if you would hold your founders in that ritual book,
yeah,
at the same standard that you hold the church,
yeah,
and how you go through the Bible and can find all your imaginary errors, if you held it at the same scrutiny, are you telling me that your founders in that ritual book, you can't find one error?
yeah.
Like there's not one.
Correct.
Like your founders, 100%, like they are just completely infallible. Like, you know, they are incapable at the ages that we were at to make any forms of mistake.
Correct.
On the Kappa Alpha Psi website, it lists Elder Watson Diggs, Ezra D. Alexander. It lists how much that they were Freemasons in Indiana. It lists even the
all
temple
of the founders
they come
were
out
Freemasons.
Of. Yes, it listed. And so that's really not that hard for us to study, but you can go through and you could, you know this fact about the president, you know this fact about founders, you know this fact about pastors and preachers, you know this fact about the Bible. You can hear one thing and that causes you to go off and talk about how it's the white man's religion, but you don't hold your ritual books to the same standards to go through them.
That's really good.
You know, that doesn't even... How does that make sense? That shows you the text that you really believe is sacred.
Yes.
Because the way that you defend it is so sacred, you know, but the Bible is jumped through hoops.
Right.
And as Black people, we shouldn't be like following this because they said this and they do this. But we should follow your founders and your rituals because they did everything perfect. But the Bible was written by man. Yeah. So was your ritual book, and you don't hold it to that same standard.
So good.
It doesn't make any sense, right?
Right.
And so you, Jesus, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's really interesting because I was really wanting, you know, Pastor Don to just share just some of the persecution that you also experienced, just even as, you know, a pastor and also First Lady here that's been shepherding different women, and some of the blowback that you would kind of receive where people felt like you can't speak to that area in their life. Especially not being in the organizations. Yeah.
And I think even coming up against that, you know, that's why we got to know what the word says. Yeah. You know, because it can be intimidating, you know, because again, you're not in the organization, or, you know, or people feeling like, you know, we're coming against, you know, Black people, and, you know, just the whole, the whole 9 yards. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute. Right. Or the community, the Black community. We Black. We ain't coming against the Black. We trying to help free the Black community, you know? So, but it has been, you know, I would say more ups than downs.
Yeah.
You know,
absolutely.
Seeing individuals at our church in particular just struggling, you know, you've had to talk to a couple of them, struggling, but, you know, really taking them off to the side, saying, you know, you having that opportunity. Hey, I was in it. I know it. I can talk to you about it.
And like I said,
you remember this?
This isn't even anything that we're ostracizing them for.
No.
Like here's the truth, and even realizing it's a journey. You know what I mean? But the truth isn't going to change during your journey.
That's facts.
And giving people, you know, the grace to go on their journey, but this is the truth.
And we're going to be held accountable.
We just are. We are. And just because you hear Pastor Ted's and Pastor Don's testimony, in my opinion, of just amazing grace, my testimony of amazing grace, I never want to get it twisted. I remember I was sharing this. It's the worst thing in the world where you believe that you're owed that same amount of grace, because what you're missing is the fact that we're held accountable based upon what we know. You know, and that was not the circumstance.
Correct.
Every portion of his walk where God made it known, he was obedient to those things. And so God, because he is just, does not hold us accountable for things where we are ignorant of.
Correct.
And when he heard the truth, he repented. Now you are not allotted a 30-year journey after hearing the full truth.
Right.
And so I don't want you to think that after you hear the full unadulterated truth, he didn't have a book or a podcast or whatever that he can go to. God revealed that to him now, and he showed his obedience. And as you said, like, now that we're in Christ, we obey. But a lot of people are taking it like, well, if God gave you that amount of time, then I do. No. We all know people who didn't make it to our age. No. We all know people who were not given the same level of grace to work through certain things, you know, because God can only share one time. Even when we go out and we preach the gospel, it just says until all have heard. It doesn't say multiple times. Now, we're so grateful and so gracious, you know, that we serve such a good God that he was willing to come after us as many times. But it is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of a living God. It really truly is. And so you said something really good to me one time where you were speaking about, as a pastor, if this is an area I can't touch in your life because it's secret, I wanted you to share that. Like, how can I pastor you?
Yeah. I actually said that to an individual who I said to her, I said, because you're not willing to open up your ritual book with me, sit down and have a woman of God conversation. I'm your pastor, to have a conversation with you. I said, how can I help you in this area? And I said, I want you to know that I, as your one of your spiritual leaders, I'm shut out of this area in your life. And you won't give me access. You won't give me the right. And I said, and you know, that's why, and God is good. That's why when we brought Melissa here, I want you to go behind closed doors, and she already know what it says in your ritual book, because y'all are in the same organization. She was in the same organization. So open up the book, talk with her. Here's a resource. That's the most you'll allow me to do, is give you a resource. And she's a godly woman.
And how loving is God, but also accountable is he? Because there's a scenario where there was a young lady that, in that scenario that Pastor Dawn talked to, and she sent the video to, and she actually didn't come to Pastor Dawn. She went to another Delta and said, you know what? Well, I know you love God, and I respect you. Can you watch this and then talk to me? Because basically we can't pastor her because we not Deltas.
Wow.
Can you talk to me about this? And let me tell you what happened. That lady came to the church she came to the event. After the one that Pastor Dawn couldn't talk to, she sent her the video to her and wanted her to come back to her and then tell me. But she came back to you and she denounced that Sunday. And she sent that video to all the other women. And I think they got back together, but it is what it is. But the whole point was, and the reason why is like, well, she couldn't hear it from Pastor Dawn, but then she got free,
right?
And you couldn't hear from her either.
Wow.
So that's the danger, is that this is real.
Spiritual.
It's spiritual. And that's why we're sharing with the truth. And once again, I'm going to keep saying it again. We're not here to bash anyone, but we are going to put it out in your face, whether it hurts or not, because that's our job. And then that's on you.
That's it.
That's on you. Like I said, we're not turning this into the family church, destroy Divine Nine Church. That's not who we are.
Right.
I'm going to keep on with my series. We'll keep on teaching and preaching. But if you ask me, I'm going to tell you the truth, because it is the truth. You know,
we're not going to do your funerals, ceremonies here.
I had Greek days.
I'm not having Greek days. and I had that conversation even with a Mason after you've been here, where, you know, he said, well, it's in my, what did he say? It's in my not my obituary. It's in my, what is it called? My will. You know, that I have to have the Masonic, you know, funeral. And I said, well, you're not going to do it here.
Yeah, so while you're alive, I'm letting you know now.
So we can have this conversation now. You know what I mean? And I think this is also why pastors struggle too. Maybe this isn't the place for you. Back to the whole point, like I'm not here to just preach messages. I'm here to pastor you. You know, so if I can't speak life and speak life over you after you die, because you need Freemasonry to do that, well then maybe that's maybe that your pastor. Maybe that's where you should be. You know, and being able to have those hard conversations, which was no different than the hard conversation, going back to the story that my mother had with me at the mirror. And telling me, you're wrong. Look at yourself. And that's what God's called us to do.
Love rejoices in the truth.
Amen.
Love rejoices in the truth. One of the most scariest parables or stories when I think about this as a leader in our church is the parable of the different, like the stewards, right? Where he looks at that one and he calls him, you wicked and lazy servant, right? And it's like when the master of the house is coming back, which is Jesus, you know, and he left it to us to steward these things correctly and to steward his sheep properly. And we sat there and we said, oh, because I know you to be a hard man. Right. You know, I went and I buried this, and he snatches that talent. I think it's a parable to talent. He snatches that talent away. And, you know, upon him snatching that talent away, then he gives it to the one who goes and actually fully produces. And it's like, that is scary to me to think that the Lord, you know, because the gifts and calls are without repentance. So yeah, you'll have your churches, you can do those things, but we will be held accountable when the master does come back with what did we produce, what did we say. And so I just, this was a blessing. This was an absolute blessing for me. I
need it.
Honestly, you know what? You know, this was better than the first
Praise
time.
God, it
So
was
I'm
better.
so
No,
glad.
this was God. God,
This
was God.
Nothing but Jesus.
Yeah.
We hope that y'all were so enriched.
Amen.
You know, please share this with everybody. It doesn't matter if they were a member of Kappa Alpha Psi, any other organization, because even Pastor Dawn, she was speaking about how she was a member of the little sister of the auxiliary orgs, where she was an alpha angel. And it's very true. You know, she would hear them say alpha, alpha, light of the world all the time. So all of these things that people are coming out and they're sharing, the Lord is making it so clear that there will be evidence, there will be proof. And, you know, we are called to share our testimonies, and the more and more he allows people to testify, the more and more we cannot say and stand before God with good conscience that we did not know. So we ask that you just share it. And I was just going to ask if y'all at the family church, Winsley's, if you all have any final words to just share.
No, again, I think I said it several times, and that is just that this isn't about hazing. This isn't about the pledge process for a believer. This is about the ungodly oath.
So good.
Yeah. And the only thing that dropped in my spirit is, he who hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit of the Lord is speaking.
So good.
So good. Can you put your book up one more time?
Hey, yeah.
Please.
So literally, a lot of my testimony that I shared today is in this book called View from the End Zone, 4 Tests You Must Pass in Order to Win in Life. And it talks about the 4 tests that Jesus had to face in the wilderness: the test of identity, test of presumption, the test of performance, and the test of shortcuts.
Very, very good. Sound like you got another book in you.
It's coming out in September.
Oh, so good. Well, I just want to thank you guys. Please like, comment, and subscribe. I want you to share this everywhere. I thank you for supporting me. Thank you for supporting my channel. I want to ask that if you are in the Voorhees area of New Jersey, in any of the Philly, it doesn't matter. I am telling you to come to the family church in New Jersey. Can y'all do y'all tagline?
Absolutely. The family church is where you belong.
All right. Do the address.
333 Preston Avenue, Voorhees, New Jersey.
Amen. All right, you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Love y'all.
We love you. Bye.